All right. Next, we have the approval of tonight's meeting agenda. If there's no proposed changes, I'd welcome a motion.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next, we have the approval of the prior meeting's minutes from October 30th. Same deal.
Motion to approve the October 30th minutes?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, next we're on to what I mentioned, the community comment period of the agenda. This is a chance for any resident who is here in person to speak about a matter not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes to do so. Please state your full name and address after you approach either podium, and you have 3 minutes, so the light will turn green for your time to start. Amber when you got 30 seconds, and red when your time's up, and we'll ask you to wrap up your comments. Is anyone here that would like to participate in community comment? Please come forward. Seeing none, we will close that portion of our agenda and move right to our public hearings. So we have two. The first one is for 5605 McGuire Road. There's a variance request at play. As with any public hearing, what you can expect is an applicant, either a resident or a developer, puts in for a formal application to do something not currently allowed by our laws in the Edina. And what happens is staff will review that, consult all the different commissions and departments, put together a staff report with a bunch of findings, and then what you see tonight is a presentation based off of that report presented by staff. The Planning Commission will then have some back and forth questions, answers, comments. Then we open it to the applicant to do the same, provide their own presentation if they'd like to do so, but more importantly, stand for questions. After that, we open it to our public hearing, and similar to the community comment, you'd have 3 minutes to testify about the matter. But we also open that opportunity to those tuning in remotely. And so for those who are tuning in remotely, I'd like you to just please call the following number, and you can get in the queue and then just wait till it's your time. But the number is 312-535-8110, and enter access code 2633-784-7383. And then the password is 5454. And come this point in the meeting, we'll ask you to press *3 on your keypad to jump in the queue to speak, but right now you can hold on. After the public hearing closes, then we bring it back to the commission where we deliberate and make a recommendation for approval or denial. And without further ado, Planner Acker, take it away.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the request is for a 2.8%, 627.5 square foot variance from the 50% maximum impervious surface at 5605 McGuire Road. The subject property is located along McGuire Road, is located right here. The 22,581 square foot property is located south of McGuire Road, is immediately adjacent to single-family homes, and has a shared asphalt driveway along the south side of the property. In fact, it goes all the way out to Tracy, so it goes along the back of quite a few of the homes. The maximum impervious surface coverage allowed in the R1 zoning district is 50% of the lot area. The current property has 11,258 square feet of surface coverage for a total of 49.9%. The homeowner is proposing to increase surface coverage by 660 square feet, totaling 11,918 square feet of coverage, or 52.8% of the lot area. So this is the front of the house. The house fronts McGuire. You can see that it accesses off of McGuire as well. The driveway comes off of McGuire, and the garage doors face McGuire. This is the back driveway area as you are coming from Tracy. This would be the back of the house. The backyard currently has a shed, an in-ground pool, patio, area around the pool, a deck. Here's another photo of the back of the house. Continuing on, this is the house that's adjacent directly to the east, and that house has a driveway that accesses onto that shared driveway. And then across from that house is another house that has access off or onto that driveway. And the front of that house faces the opposite direction. And then looking towards Tracy or to the west, you can see there's one more access point on that shared driveway access. And that's this property here. The front of the house faces the opposite direction. So the subject property currently has an in-ground pool, patio, shed, deck, hard surface area is the driveway, area adjacent to the side of the garage, and then also sidewalk. And this you can see a little closer aerial view of that. This is the area that's proposed for improvement, and it is a little deceptive. The photographs, I think, help you appreciate that the lot is much larger than what you see that is within that backyard area that is inside of that fence. Most of the lot, there's additional lot area that goes beyond the fence over the drive area and then actually on the other side of the driveway. So all of this area is included in the lot. So this is what is proposed for the improvements. They are proposing to put patio area, stepping stones, additional sidewalk area that will actually be adjacent to the in-ground pool. Currently the shed is over on the west side. That'll be relocated to the east side. This is a colored version of the landscape plan, giving you a little idea of what surface areas they're proposing. So in terms of a compliance table, 50% is the city standard. The existing coverage, including that driveway along the back of the property, is 49.9%. The proposal is for 52.8% or 2.8% beyond what the current code requires or allows. Surface coverage without the driveway access, if they didn't have that driveway, the city standard is still 50%. The existing coverage with not including that access drive would be at 38.45%. And then with the additions, it would be at 41.37%. So it would actually allow an additional 971 square feet. So the driveway really does work against this property in terms of being able to accomplish any additional coverage. So staff did do findings for both approval and denial. Staff is recommending denial given that the ordinance was recently changed at the beginning of 2023. Prior to that, the city did not have any standards for hard surface coverage. And now there is, it's that 50%. Staff does recommend denial of the 2.8%, 627.5 square foot variance. Denial is based on the following findings. The proposal does not meet the standards for a variance with no circumstances unique to the specific lot. There are other properties that also have driveway access crossing their lots, having similar circumstances as the subject property. Due to the proposed increase in coverage with the patio plan totaling now 11,918 square feet of coverage, or 52.8% of the lot area conflicts with the goal to limit coverage on properties and the policy change made to protect half the lot area for open and uncovered space. The property owner situation is not unique and may set a precedent. It's not self-imposed. They didn't create the driveway, however, that precedent could affect 4 other properties with the same driveway circumstance that may require similar variances for improvements. Staff did also findings for approval. Approval of the request is based on the following findings: that the practical difficulty is caused by the existing driveway access that does not benefit the property at all and only services other properties. The unique circumstance includes the amount of access driveway coverage that does not benefit the subject lot as compared with nearby properties, so there are less opportunities for improvements on the subject property. Without there's more driveway on this particular property, the length of it, than other properties that have the driveway across it. I can't tell you exactly what the square footage is. It's just, looking at it, you can see that they are probably more impacted by that. Without the driveway, the lot could support an additional 971 square feet of hard surface improvement. It really does, the fact that the driveway bisects the lot really does impact any sort of opportunities. The proposal would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The new improvements will be behind a fenced-in yard. Rear yard will not be visible from the front street and are at grade surface improvements that will not contribute to additional building coverage. It will just be covering surface area. Any approval should be subject to the plans stated October 15th, 2024, and the engineer's staff report or staff memo that was included in the packet. Josh Kohler is present at the meeting and available for questions and is the landscape designer of the project for Southview Design. And with that, I will stop and try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner Padilla.
Yeah, a couple of questions. This house looks as though it was remodeled. Was there ever access from the driveway in the back to this house, or did they always have access through McGuire to the garages?
That's a good question. I don't know that. I'm assuming that it was always through McGuire, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay, and then another question. When you change a standard like you did in 2023, or when the city does, to 50%, is there notice given, or does that just happen and everyone is expected to know about that, or how does that work?
There is notice given. It's published in the paper. There's public hearings that occur both at the Planning Commission level and at the City Council level.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Haneman.
You mentioned in the staff report that there may be creating a precedent. I wondered if when you were making that comment, if that was specific to other homes or just the 4 properties along this sort of back alley.
Well, specifically regarding the 4, but when you talk about overbuilding on a lot or coverage, it's really difficult to justify. I mean, the shape of the lot doesn't matter. The location of whatever it is doesn't matter. It's just a percentage of the lot, and it's very difficult to try to justify one percentage over another.
And do you have any history on how that alley, for lack of a better word, sort of came to be? Because it seems like it's not everybody who uses that as the access to their home.
Yeah, actually very few that are adjacent to it because there's a lot of fencing off. It's a private drive. I never knew it was there, and it's been there for, I don't know, longer than I've been here. And I'm assuming when some of the property was developed after subdivision, but it has to be a private easement agreement that would be recorded with the county. It's not anything that the city has any record of in terms of
How it came to be.
an easement agreement, so.
All right, thanks.
Would you ever, I was kind of going through this because it does mean that other lots have the ability, like the one just behind it has the ability to do, much more coverage because they don't have a portion of the drive on their lot. And yeah, 5604, right? And 5600, because that's totally outside their lot lines, they don't have that kind of negative piece on their lots. Would you ever consider just apportioning splitting the area of that road up among those 10 houses that are along it? Because the reason I'm asking is because on some, for constructing this deck and patio, it would be very easy to kind of use that alley for construction access and take out down a portion of a fence so they will get some benefit from using that road. And it doesn't seem fair to kind of take all that road off of this lot. So I'm wondering if you would ever consider doing a precedent, like just dividing the total area up among those.
I guess from a staff standpoint, I have to look at the ordinance and
Yeah.
weigh it against what's there. And it would be up to Planning Commission to decide that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Falk, I'm not following your suggestion. Can you say that a different way, maybe?
City is worried about setting a precedent, but it also seems like this lot is burdened by the fact that it has an alley that is used by 4 houses, but they aren't getting any use of it. But anybody could potentially use it in the future. I mean, this is a new house and it'll be there for a long time, but if the house next to it, rebuilt, it could continue to kind of use the driveway along the back, the 5601. I don't know if it was 5601 or 5609 that had the driveway along the back that you showed, the 1-story house.
5601.
Okay. Yeah. But it could have access to McGuire, because I looked on the right, it has, but it'd be, yeah. Right, so in the future, it could possibly be that everybody decides to build a second garage or an ADU on the back of their land, and then they all use it, right? So there's still that possibility. So I'm wondering if you just apportion that driveway among the properties, and then they get some benefit of their land. Because it seems like it's an undue burden on 5617, 5613, 5609, 5605, and 5601, and not 5604, which does use the drive, and 5600 uses it?
Yes. And again, we don't have a copy of the cross easement agreement or the access agreement.
Yeah.
I don't know who has legal access to this private drive.
Right.
I don't know if,
And I can ask the
yeah.
client, that question too, but it just feels like it would be more fair. And also the 50% is like an overall average. I mean, we want each property to abide by that. But if 2 properties essentially abide by the 50%, one is at 49 and the other's at 51, it's still a conglomerate of 50. Does that make sense?
It just so make sure I'm tracking. So it looks like 5604, or whatever street that is to the south, is using the shared alley. So would they get part of it too?
It's really
That would be
part
very
of the
difficult.
variance findings. That would be part of the finding for an approval, the fact that they have this practical difficulty in meeting the impervious surface because of that driveway that's located on their site.
I see what you mean, yeah. So you're not actually talking about trading land, say, between 5605 and 5604. You're just say reflect that in our decision today. Got it, thank you.
Commissioner Miranda.
So the impervious surface regulations were based on a study done in Morningside, right?
Partially, yes.
Yeah, and the average lot size there is about 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, I mean,
It varies, of course, but
the
the main streets.
Yes.
And this is how big is this lot?
It is 22,581 square feet. It's a large lot.
So it's twice the size. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? Okay. All right, well, thank
Another
you. Chris.
question for the applicant.
Yeah. Now is the time for the applicant. If there's a separate presentation, or if you can just stand for questions, introduce yourself, name and address. You're good, right? You're good up front.
Josh Collar with Southview Design. So we're doing the work on this property. We've been working on this since probably May, did a couple surveys, but to me, this is the perfect reason to have a variance. We do a lot of variances all the time, all throughout the Twin Cities. And this particular lot is very much subject to something that they don't use. This driveway is being accessed by two houses, 5601 and 5600 are the only two that need this driveway to get there. And the other house, if you look at 5604, they have a driveway from the main street that just actually goes all the way through to the alley, right? And so my clients, you know, what we're trying to do is just put a small patio in there. You know, at the beginning we said, well, we could easily just cut, 600 square foot out of this driveway that is on your property that you don't use. Let's just cut that out of there, and then we won't even have to be here at this meeting. The driveway is obviously quite a bit larger than this little patio that we're putting in, or this driveway, and it's all on their property. But the homeowners didn't want to do that. They said, well, I want to, we love our neighbors, we want to make sure they're the ones that need this driveway. They maintain it, they shovel it. It's going to be really difficult if we just cut 600 square foot of this out and put grass in there to shovel it in the winter months and whatever. So, to me, this is the reason to have a variance. I absolutely get the 50%. We do a ton of work here in Edina, but the entire, all of that, their backyard seems really small because they put this pool in and they couldn't put the fence where their property goes. They had to put it right to the edge of the pool because obviously we can't block the road for the other people. So, to me, this is we're taking up a ton of square footage for this road, for this, whatever you want, if you want to call it a road or just driveway that they don't use. They don't have a gate to it. They don't access it whatsoever. So, again, we've discussed just taking a section of it out or taking the whole piece of it out and then just driving over grass to get to those other two properties. They just don't want to do that for their neighbors, right? So, I don't know. It's just kind of a goofy situation of all the variances that we do every year. I kind of felt like this is the one that made the most sense for a reason to do it. So I don't know. That's kind of, and I went through a few different things too, just going through this. Even if and I've got the survey here, even if we cut their property off, and I'm not saying to do this, but if they sold their property at where the fence goes and just cut that off and sold it to the neighbors behind them, let's just say, and you ended their property, their square footage right at where their fence is, so before that road even happens, we would be under 50%. Even if we just eliminated that amount of square footage and got rid of, because the whole thing is hardcover right there. So it's just kind of a goofy situation. It doesn't make sense to me. And again, they want to be very cordial with all their neighbors. They don't want to cut out this little asphalt section so that they can do a patio. But that's kind of the next step. And we weren't even going to use this road for construction. In fact, that's kind of who these people are. They're like, well, I don't want to damage the road if we're going to have equipment and stuff in there. So we actually proposed doing this project all by hand and coming in from the front. So because they don't use that road at all. So they're very, what I want to say, they're very conscious of making sure that they don't, being friendly to everybody in the neighborhood. So it's just kind of a goofy situation. I don't know. That's kind of what we've got going on. So there's, two things. We could cut a section out and make it under 50% real easy. We could cut the whole thing out and make the property under 50%. Or if we didn't even for the variance, didn't even count that whole square footage of their property, took the whole property away and the hard cover of that road away, we would be under 50%.
Thank you very much. You said you had a question, Commissioner Elkin?
Yeah, just a couple. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Yep.
Is there an easement?
The easements, I've got another survey here if you want. No, the easement that they have is just, again, a typical 5-foot easement from the, can I use your mouse? 'Cause it's like back. So the easement is actually off of their property line, 5 foot towards the road. So it's just a utility easement per the survey.
That's pretty interesting. Did the owners consider three things? One, reducing impermeable on the north side of the house. Two, reducing the impermeable on the west side of the house. And three, reducing, oh, actually four. Three, reducing the impermeable on the pool deck on the southeast part of the house. And whatever I'm up to, four, I think, getting rid of the shed. Seems like you could find 600 square feet there.
Yeah, so the shed is kind of where they put the pool equipment stuff. It's a portable shed. I mean, it sits on a, I don't even think it's on a slab. I think it's just on a class 5 base or whatever. So so we were just gonna move that because they kind of put a lot of their pool toys and whatever in that. The pool deck's actually not very large. It might look a little deceiving on this, but if you walk it, once you start getting any little bit of furniture on there or a grill on there whatsoever, there's not much room on there. You've got a walkway going around the far end of it towards the alley and towards where the existing shed is now, and a little bump up. By the time if you were to put in a lot of furniture on there, it gets pretty tight. And so the reason this area where they're looking at doing this, it's kind of shady with some of the trees and whatnot. It's just kind of mucky underneath there, and they wanted an area for the adults to get away from the pool when the kids are jumping in and swimming. So again, at the very beginning, we were just, I just proposed, well, it's on your property. Let's just cut some of that driveway. Actually, I don't remember how big it is, 2,000 some square feet or whatever it is. And they just said, well, I feel bad if we did that because other people tend to use the road. So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
As far as you understand, there's no private easement in place from.
Not anything that I know of, no.
And usually that is like the onus on the surveyor to incorporate that into a
there's
certified
nothing on-
survey.
And Chris had us get a whole new survey. They had a new survey done when they did the pool. I think it was 2 years ago. And then when we submitted this, we had another survey done as well.
Commissioner Haneman.
The survey notes that no title search was done.
I don't think there was anything, and the homeowners didn't know of anything as well. So.
Okay.
And I don't think there's anything with the city either. Anything that we could find. Yeah.
I guess I'm just curious. We have 10 homes here impacted by this road sort of one way or another. The homes on the north side, they're all paying property taxes because that land is part of their parcel. Mm-hmm. And the beneficiaries are 5600 and 5601. But if 5605 doesn't have anything recorded against their title and wanted to make the road disappear because they grew up, woke up one morning and wanted to be bad neighbors, 5601 and 5600 are then landlocked. They have no access to a public right-of-way. Is that correct?
I was just out there again today because we've been working on this since May. I didn't pay. I think 5601, if they had to, they could get a driveway in to the other road.
To McGuire?
Yeah, 5600 I think would be really difficult. I think it gets really steep right there. So I don't know if they would even be able to.
And there's no existing curb cuts,
There's
so they
no
don't
existing
necessarily
curb
have
cutter.
a
Nope.
right to do that.
That's correct. Yep.
So to me, this seems like a problem just from life safety and security, that we have parcels that don't have protected rights for access for an ambulance or a fire truck. And I guess I don't know how as a city we handle that, but to your point, 5605 could reduce the width of that road.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And it would, if there's nothing recorded against title and there's no cross easement agreement, they would be, I think, I'm not a lawyer, but they would be within their right to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think whether we approve it or don't approve it, I think there should be some guidance that we don't create a precedent or a situation for these 10 homes in the future that could end up being negatively impacting other residents.
Thanks. Commissioner Bornstein, you got something?
Do you happen to know, I just can't tell from here, how wide that drive area is?
Ooh, good question. I don't think I have a scale with me. Sorry. I want to say it's got to be close to 10 foot wide at least. Yeah, 10 to 12 foot wide.
Okay. And how wide does something need to be for someone to be able to use it for vehicle
Well, it
access?
depends on how you want to use it. I mean, we've done properties where, just to make it look nice, where we've done just two paths, you know, down the side and had grass in the middle.
Sure.
But we generally don't ever do that on properties. That's usually if it's a secondary road, because if you got a shovel, I mean, you know how our winters get if we're shoveling or whatever, and you've got sod or astroturf or even gravel in the middle, it makes it, you know, pretty difficult to do. So you could do something like that. Probably 10 foot's usually, I would say 10 foot's usually the minimum. I don't think we do a lot of driveways where we are ever much less than 10 foot wide.
When you thought about taking from this driveway to just find 600 square feet?
That's
or
what,
something,
yeah, that's what I presented originally.
How much width did you figure you needed to take?
I didn't do it that way. I just figured let's just cut a section out in the middle.
Okay.
So to come up with the 625 or whatever it was, 625 square feet or whatever.
Okay.
But I mean, we could certainly do that, but you'd probably have to narrow it by, yeah, I bet you'd probably have to narrow by at least 2 feet on both sides, you know, probably something like that. It's a good question. I could scale it out. I mean, you're just thinking, could you shave one side of it and make it really narrow or something like that? I mean, it costs money and it'd be a fair amount of work, but yeah, you probably could come up with something that way too.
Okay.
Be easier just to cut a section out or just eliminate the driveway in its entirety, you know, just on their property.
Yeah. Okay. And then Commissioner Alcar asked if you guys had considered, you know, trying to shave or take something from anything on the north or west side of the property. What was your thought about that?
We just didn't. You have to have a long driveway to get to the McGuire Road anyway. It's quite a ways there. The house is set back, and it's hard. It's deceiving when you see the pictures. If you were to go in the backyard, it's tight the way it is. I mean, there's not a lot of patio space, and because that fence is on that side of the property and not on the other side of the road, that backyard is really small. So it's tight there.
Okay.
We didn't really look at that.
Thanks. Yep. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for the applicant? Move to the public hearing. All right, thank you. As mentioned, this is a public hearing, so again, there's an opportunity for those who are here in person to participate and those tuning in remotely. I'll repeat the info again, and then we'll give an opportunity to people who are here first. But for those tuning in remotely, the reminder is to call the number 312-535-8110, enter access code 2633-784-7383, and the password is 5454. And now you may press *3 on your keypad to get in the queue to speak. This should all be on the screen for you because that would be difficult to remember. And in the meantime, while people jump into the queue, if they happen to want to, we'll give an opportunity for those who are here in person to testify. So like community comment, you have 3 minutes to do so. State your full name, your address, and you got 3 minutes. Is anyone here in person that'd like to testify? See no one rushing. Let's, rushing, I should say. Someone might be rushing, but we can tune to the I guess the virtual waiting room. Is there anyone in it?
Nobody's in the virtual waiting room.
Maybe we'll give it like 30 more seconds.
Yep,
And then
sounds
if
good.
we got no one, we'll welcome motion to close the public hearing.
Seeing nobody has joined, I think it's safe to proceed.
We have a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Public hearing's closed. And now it's back to the planning commission to deliberate. And maybe before we do so, I just have a quick question for staff, either Chris or Carrie. What would be the process for, say, these 11 houses to try to turn that driveway into an alley that's owned by the city?
They'd have to petition for it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would. And for the city to maintain also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to meet certain widths. It may have to get expanded to a wider than 10 or 12 feet in order to get plows through there, city plows.
And there isn't a cul-de-sac at the end, it ends.
Right,
So
that would
you'd
have to get bigger
turn.
too.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, maybe it's just a city road, but yeah, just curious, because most of the time we see things like this, a road behind houses, it's an alleyway that isn't owned by any of the property owners. So this is definitely unique for anything we typically see. So just curious. All right.
I mean, for that reason, I'm really uncomfortable kind of voting because it feels like we don't know fully the extent of the situation of who has rights to that. And, you know, I'm sympathetic to the landowner that if it wasn't part of their property, they wouldn't have to be here. But it is part of their property for, it appears, benefits of others, but that's not recorded. So they aren't obligated to, I mean, I just feel like it's a messy situation, and to make a decision about such a small amount of land that if circumstances were clearer, we may not even have had to make a decision. I don't know how other commissioners feel.
How do other commissioners feel? Commissioner Felt, yeah, let's just go down the line.
I agree with Commissioner Hahnemann. I think it's a messy situation. I think there probably should be an agreement among the neighbors because there could be some tough times. But the other thing is, you know, any one of these people, if they had the room, could build an ADU or a second garage and then use the alleyway. So, I mean, I think there could be additional drives off of it. Right? You don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. So I think because there is that potential of people being able to drive down it and access the back of their houses or do an addition or do a garage, that I see some leeway with kind of apportioning the area among the houses. But I too feel a little anxious about not knowing the legal status of that land among all these owners.
Yeah, I don't, you know, we get a lot of these overbuild patio type of requests. I think this is the third one we've had in the last year, maybe. Is that right? The first one was a guy, folks in Morningside here had kind of done this, built a nice home, had a nice backyard space that had been paved at a large driveway, and then wanted to add a patio and go beyond the limits, and that variance was denied because it was an elective project that didn't need to be done. And then there was another one recently, somewhere on the southern part of Edina. Someone wanted to build a hardscape patio closer to the lake, and that was also going to exceed, I think, some coverage requirements after building a nice, beautiful new home and covering the lot in other ways that benefited them, and we denied that as not meeting the variance requirements. And this seems similar to me. I know there's always a wrinkle. There's always a wrinkle. It's the lake or it's the shared driveway or something, and there's always a little bit of a wrinkle. But from a precedent perspective, I think this commission's been pretty consistent that when it's just an elective project like wanting to build a bigger patio, we find those situations to not meet the criteria for a variance. we don't find there to be practical difficulties and we don't find the circumstances to be imposed by external factors. So here, I mean, they have a beautiful property, big driveway, large house, pool, patio, and I think I'm just going to find it difficult to find that those variance criteria are met in this instance, especially given that, you know, I know it sounds a little awkward, everybody's trying to be diplomatic and totally appreciate that, but it does sound like there is a way to actually take sufficient square footage out of that area in the back, which these landowners do own, to make the project go forward. So for all those reasons, I just don't think all the factors are met.
Commissioner Smith.
Sure, this is an interesting setup for sure, no doubts about it. I was really thinking hard about this one, just listening to everybody and listening to all the feedback. Trying to project this 20 years out, what would most likely happen 20 years out? What would most likely happen, I think, is that 5601 and 5600 would eventually build some type of driveway to the main roads, which would then give all the other homes, the other 8 homes, or the other 4 homes, a reason to reclaim that area so that it's now part of their property. And if that does happen, then the patio that they're proposing would meet the requirements, right? So it doesn't meet right now because of that driveway, and essentially the practicalness of their property is cut off by that driveway. So I feel like this one might be a little bit unique. I'm kind of leaning right now positive to approve this, only because of this unique setup here. And if we project this down the road, they will be able to reclaim those spaces. I think the applicant made a pretty compelling case that this is kind of reasons why variance happens. And I think Commissioner Bornstein made some good cases of precedents that we've done in the past, right? And they're all unique and they're all different. You have to make a judgment call. And I think this one seems reasonable to me when I project the long term of this space. And so I'm leaning towards an approve vote on this one, just knowing that eventually those homes would reclaim that driveway and it's not going to be an issue anymore.
Thanks, Commissioner Padilla.
I don't believe it's the purview of this commission to be looking at, to be conjecturing about what could be happening 5 or 10 or 20 years in the future. I think we need to be making a decision based upon the facts, however slim they might be, for what we have in front of us, and make a decision based upon that. And I think the guideline or the standard is clear that it's 50%. There is, they have a lot of beautifully designed home on a large lot, so they, I don't think that there are practical difficulties. Some of the times when we have granted variances, it's because there's a lot of dynamic things going on, whether it's the E-line or a building or a neighborhood changing or something like that. And that's not the case here. This is all very static kind of set of circumstances. So I don't feel that a variance needs to be approved. This is all given. This is what the law has been for the last couple of years. And if the practical solution, just like Commissioner Bornstein mentioned, when we had a situation like this before, is we said, okay, well, if you don't need hardscape, you want to, have some privacy and you want to put chairs down, you can do that without requiring a variance and still getting what you're looking for out of that space. So I agree with the staff on this and for denial.
Commissioner Miranda.
So part of the reason for this ordinance is dealing with water in the city. And, that doesn't change regardless of whether something is intentional or not. we have more and more water problems with the city, and we have to deal with them. Now, if this were a project where we were debating whether to add this road, and this house already was at its maximum, and we wanted to add another unit of housing or something, and adding this road would put it over the minimum, that I could see going for, because then you're adding additional housing or improving the city in some way. In this case, the question we're asking is, does this house, which has quite a large driveway that's very wide, and that goes around the side of the house, and then the pool and the deck in the backyard, I mean, it's got a considerable amount of hardscape. And the question is, does this property need a variance? I mean, should we approve a variance to add additional hardscape to this? And I keep coming to the conclusion that we don't, so.
Just really quickly, I think we do know the legal status of this lot. The shared driveway is pretty clearly on their land. And, many lots have some baggage that come along with them. Sometimes that creates constraints. My house has a easement across it, so my neighbor's driveway goes right across my lot. And that's a constraint for me for impermeable surface. And I knew that when I moved in. It's not like it was a surprise. I think the easement, or excuse me, the shared driveway does have value, does provide benefit. It's an option for the owners of 5605 to do something different in the future that they wouldn't have otherwise. To Commissioner Felt's point about an ADU, if they chose to do that someday, that'd be a great way to access. And they couldn't do that way if the driveway wasn't there. So it has some value, whether or not it's being taken advantage of today. And finally, I just think there are so many options available to the applicant to find 600 square feet, take a foot off the alley, take some more off the massive amount of concrete on the north and the west and on the deck, find another place to put the pool toys instead of the shed. And I can't believe you couldn't find a way to get to 600. That's my 2 cents. So I'm leaning against.
All right. I guess how I approach this one, it still seems simple in my way, in my interpretation of like, there's a practical difficulty with complying with the code because of this driveway that is on their site, providing access to others that otherwise doesn't have to be there. So could we require them to take out a section of it, or could they elect to do that and then comply? Sure. That seems like there's a practical difficulty to comply. And it's definitely a unique circumstance. This is not something we see across Edina with driveways going across people's properties. So, and they didn't create that. That was part of the condition. Is this imposed by the homeowner? They didn't impose it. So, I mean, I can see this both ways. But I think taking a strip out of the middle of that driveway just actually removes the character of the neighborhood more than maintains it. So that's kind of what makes me more favorable to letting this happen. And again, if this were to become an alley, and it's not our purview, but to their point, if you didn't count any of this and the property was smaller, it complies even with what they want to do. And that is unique. And so do we want them to cut out a section 4 feet, 3 feet wide down the middle of the driveway, and then they could comply? That just seems like a lot of unnecessary stuff to do to achieve the same result. So I think I'm leaning more in favor of approving or recommending approval over denial, just from that simple fact. Any other comments or motions?
I'm not sure which way to go, but I can start a motion and see what happens. Motion to deny the variance request for 5605 McGuire Road.
Second.
Let's just do a roll call vote for this one.
Commissioner Alcar,
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda.
Aye, so just to be clear, aye is voting to deny.
Correct. Commissioner Padilla,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Nay.
Commissioner Bornstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Felt,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanneman,
Nay.
Chair Bennett.
Nay. So that is 5 in favor, 3 opposed, so the motion has been denied. So good luck on next steps, and wish you the best. On to our next public hearing.
Can I make a comment before
Sure.
we move on?
Yep.
I'm just considering what would have made me vote differently. And one of the things that might have made me vote, or that likely would have made me vote differently, is if the applicant had made an effort to get to the number. For example, I might have perceived the application differently if they'd come up with 100 square feet here and 100 square feet there by making some compromises and choices on their existing infrastructure, and said, wow, we tried hard, but we're still a couple 100 square feet short. That would have made me think differently about it, for what it's worth.
Can I add a comment too?
Sure.
I think if that alley was clear, if there was an agreement and some understanding about that alley, that would make a difference for me as well.
All right. Planner Teague, take it away with the next public hearing.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. This is a site the vast majority of you are pretty familiar with. This will be the third comprehensive plan amendment proposed here in the last 3 years. So the site is in the northwest quarter of the city on Vernon Avenue, just west of Highwood Drive. It's the old Keys Auto Repair, and it was a gas station at one time. Some of those previous requests, we did have a restaurant proposed back in 2022, and a comp plan amendment to re-guide this to neighborhood node. That was denied, unanimously recommended for denial by the Planning Commission, and the City Council denied it as well. Then last year, you recall the green drop proposal for the donation center. That again was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission and denied by the City Council. So this is a little bit smaller of a restaurant this time. So here's a look at the existing building. So the issue that we've struggled with on this one is that it's guided in the comprehensive plan for medium density residential. That designation goes back to 1980. Likely was added because of the medium density residential uses to the west. However, the site has been zoned for well over 50 years for commercial uses. PCD 4, Planned Commercial District. That would allow gas stations, car washes, and auto repair. So the proposal before you this evening is to remodel and expand the building for Station Pizza. The total square footage of the building with the expansion would be 1,600 square feet, and there would be a 20-seat restaurant inside for indoor dining, and there would be takeout and delivery. As a comparison, that previous restaurant that was proposed, that was 2,400 square feet, but was a 59-seat restaurant, and it had rooftop dining and also a patio proposed. I'll show a site plan here toward the end. So here's a look at the proposal. On the left is the existing garage lobby space. So they would remodel that existing space for a kitchen and an 8-seat counter. There would be what they're labeling a party room. There'd be 12 seats here. And then the expansion would be to the west, and that would be coolers, dry storage, somewhat similar to the Town Hall Station, where that gas station was remodeled. They did a little expansion off the back for coolers and dry storage. You probably recall the sketch plan they went through, some of the revisions that they've made since that sketch plan this past summer, creating that indoor seating space for 20 people, adding that addition to the west side of the building. They've created a bike paved area on the north side of the building and added tandem parking for employees. So here's a look at the proposed site plan. So you can see the addition located here. This is that patio area. They would install a 6-foot new cedar fence along the lot line to provide screening and landscaping. Also, that cedar fence would extend to the south and add this landscaping. The tandem parking stalls that I was referring to would be right here. That would be for employee parking. Based on city code, they're required 24 parking stalls. They're proposing 24. These 3 tandem stalls would bring the total to 27. Here is a look at the proposed elevation, and I'll let the architect get into this in a little more detail, but the addition basically would match the existing building, and they would spruce it up a bit. So there's a lot requested here, similar to our past requests. Comprehensive plan amendment to re-guide the site from medium-density residential to neighborhood commercial. That would be a new land use designation. The restaurant that was proposed previously, the proposal was for designating that site for neighborhood node. And as we talked about, a 16,000 square foot lot really isn't a neighborhood node. But that was the smallest commercial designation that we had at the time. So the proposal here is to create a new designation. And then a rezoning from PCD 4 to PCD 1. And in the PCD 1 district, restaurants are limited to 1 acre in size, just over 43,000 square feet, and this site is just 16,000 square feet. There are a number of variances also proposed. Side yard setback variance for the addition, 25 to 13 feet. Setback variances toward Eden Prairie Road to 20 feet for that building expansion, 9 feet for that bike area along the north, and parking lot setback variance from 10 feet. I'll show where these are located here on my next slide. Well, we'll just skip to the next slide. So the parking, the existing pavement is located here. So they would just resurface this area, but they would expand in order to get this extra parking space here. So this is that 0-foot variance that's requested along the north lot line. The 9-foot setback for this bike rack area. The 20-foot setback to Eden Prairie Road. So what they would do is just match the existing non-conforming setback, at current setback 20 feet. And the west lot line variance would be from 25 feet to 13. That previous request for the restaurant, the proposal there was for a 5-foot setback. And the 0 setback is a separation between parking space and the building. That's an existing condition out there. So with this one, the city has complete discretion, somewhat similar to the variance, but this one even more so, discretion to approve or deny because of the comprehensive plan amendment. So that requires a 4/5 vote of the city council. So primary issues. Is that comprehensive plan amendment reasonable? Is the rezoning reasonable? And are the variances justified? So again, want to emphasize you have complete discretion to approve or denial. Staff has prepared findings for both approval and denial that are outlined in your staff report. So first, to go through the comprehensive plan amendment. So again, you see it's guided medium density residential, and the proposal would be for a new designation for neighborhood commercial. And that would be described as small-scale retail and commercial uses, building footprints less than 2,000 square feet, and the floor area ratio per zoning code. So again, the existing comprehensive plan allows medium-density residential, so the maximum number of units that could be built on the site would be 4. That would require several variances in order to get 4 structures on that site, and I'll show you the buildable area here in a minute. But we've made this comparison before with the Valley View and Wooddale development. That site is 11,000 square feet, and there were 4 townhomes built on that site. This one is 16,000 square feet, so it is a little bit larger. So with the comprehensive plan amendment, staff is recommending approval, and really the basis for staff's thinking on approval on this is that this has been a commercial site for over 50 years. It's reasonable given the change in use from auto repair to a small scale restaurant, the small scale being the key. So the rezoning or the comprehensive plan amendment would be generally consistent with the existing commercial zoning on the site. As I mentioned, gas stations, car washes, and repair stations are currently a permitted use. This would create a smaller scale category in the comprehensive plan, like I had mentioned before. The traffic generated from this site would be slightly higher than the previous auto repair. They would be providing landscaping along that west lot line to minimize impacts better than the previous request. And it would be an improvement to current conditions. Traffic and parking study was done. Ed Terhar with Stantec did that study. He's online with us this evening, should you have any questions. But the traffic study concluded that the existing roadways can support the project. And while the parking is code compliant, their conclusion on the parking was that 22 stalls would be adequate to support the use. In terms of the rezoning, so this on the screen are the criteria that the Planning Commission and Council consider. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? So again, we wouldn't support the rezoning if the comprehensive plan is not amended. Would not be detrimental to surrounding properties, wouldn't result in an overly intensive land use, result in undue traffic congestion, conforms to the provisions excuse me, battling a cold a little bit, provisions to the code, and again, they're asking for variances, and provides a proper relationship between buildings, between uses. So again, staff is recommending approval here, subject to the comprehensive plan being amended. Again, the site's been a commercial use for over 50 years. In terms of regulations on the site, so again, if the site is properly regulated, that some of those conditions that we can add include hours of operation. They're proposing that the business be open from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. You can put further restrictions on that if you so choose to help mitigate impacts to the neighborhood. That could also be regulated through a liquor license in the future. The parking setbacks are met. There's a lot of feedback on Better Together in regard to if we rezone this to planned commercial district, it just opens the door for more intensive uses. So the safeguards that would be in place should the site be rezoned would be the setback requirements. Any expansion of this building is going to require variances. Any expansion in the footprint is going to require more parking spaces. So anything to expand the use would have to come back before the Planning Commission and City Council. So the site would be separated. It's about 100-foot separation between the addition and the use to the west, across the street from single-family homes to the north. So this is that buildable area, given the restrictive setbacks having 2 street frontages, 35 feet on both sides, and the 25-foot setback on the west, and the odd shape of the lot, the triangular shape and small size. So that leads into the variance criteria and meeting our reasonable use, the practical difficulty test. That being that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property and wouldn't alter the essential character, excuse me, of the neighborhood. So again, staff is supporting the variances. Again, the existing use on the site been commercial for over 50 years. Closest structure to the west, closest adjacent structure being over 100 feet away. Practical difficulties include that small lot size, irregular shape, and the restrictive setbacks with 2 street frontages. Really couldn't build anything on this site without needing variances. And that cedar fencing and landscaping on both the north and the west side will help minimize those impacts. So again, here's the variances that were requested. So I thought it might be useful to show the Planning Commission that previous restaurant proposal and how it compares. So there's roughly 5 variances here in addition to the lot size variance. That previous request, they were going to reconfigure and expand the parking. So they were proposing a 3-foot setback. The trash area was to the rear of the building. That had a 16-foot setback, so variance was needed there. The addition to the building extended a little closer to Eden Prairie Road. They're proposing 20 feet tonight. 12 feet was the request previously. You can see the 5-foot setback on the west lot line. They were also expanding the parking area to have a 0-foot setback, so there was virtually no screening along that west lot line. There was also a patio proposed that extended basically to the lot line. And with that patio, there was the separation of the parking areas. There was some concern by the traffic consultant at that time about cutting off that, having that, the flow through. Yes, thank you. And also to look at the number of seats, so you can see it was a much larger restaurant with 59 seats, and they also were proposing rooftop dining as well. So with that, again, staff has outlined findings for both approval and denial in your staff report, but we are supportive of the proposal tonight. With that, I can stand for questions, and the applicants are here for a presentation as well.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions, fellow commissioners? Commissioner Hahnemann.
Do you know how big that buildable square footage area is inside that triangle?
I don't, if I, it's probably about the size of the existing footprint of that building, so
1,200 square feet or something?
feet, roughly.
For a floor plate. And can you compare, for our edification, the setback variances on this site versus the Valley View site? Are they somewhat similar?
There were setbacks, I believe, on all sides on that one, and there were quite a few of them. I'd have to go back and take a look, but that one was kind of triangular shaped as well.
Any other questions for Carrie? Yeah? Yeah, all right.
I'm going to monopolize the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Teague. A couple things. So there's a lot of concern in Better Together about the number of variances suggesting an improper use. So while we're on this chart here, it seems like any use would require a number of variances. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
And in fact, the existing building, which we have become comfortable with over 50 years, would need variances on 3 out of 4 sides.
Correct.
Okay. On the comprehensive plan, if we change it to neighborhood commercial, and then somebody came along in 20 years and wanted to build townhouses, would we have to change it back in the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Okay. On the patio space, or excuse me, on the bike racks on the north side, I noticed that has access to the kitchen as well as to the dining room. hypothetically, if the owner decided to put a couple of tables out there, could he do that?
Yeah, that was one of the first questions. I thought that was a patio when I first saw that. They have indicated that they don't intend to do that. That would be a reasonable condition that you could place on this, to say there would be no outside seating if you desire.
Okay, and hypothetically, if we agreed to a patio there, would that change the parking?
It would not. We don't include outdoor seating in the parking requirements.
Okay. If I wanted to, well, if someone wanted to build a 24-hour car wash using the existing building, could they do that?
Using the existing building with no expansion, they could,
Okay, so I could do that today
yeah.
or tomorrow.
Yep.
It's probably too late today. Okay. Sidewalks. Can you just spend a few minutes talking about the sidewalk plan?
Yeah, sorry I didn't touch on that. They're showing this along the curb. In the engineering memo, one of the conditions of approval would be to do a boulevard-style sidewalk there rather than that back of curb arrangement. It is in our sidewalk plan to have a sidewalk on that side, so while it may not connect to the west immediately, we would like to see that put in.
If we were to proceed with this, does the fact of this project going ahead influence timing of adjacent sidewalk building?
Potentially.
It could.
Yep, yeah.
Okay. One more thing. I have a question for the traffic study consultant. Are you there?
Ed, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Ed. Thanks for joining us. I just want to make sure I was understanding the exhibit in the packet from the traffic study. So it's showing the PM peak hour details. And if I'm understanding this right, it looks like there's about approximately, just use round numbers, in the 2026 build scenario, something like 700 cars going east and 300 cars going west during the peak hour. Is that approximately correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and this business is going to drive 15 trips during that hour?
During that PM peak hour, correct.
So that's something like a 1.5% increase in the traffic flow during the peak hour?
It's a very small percentage.
Yes, very small percent. And this wasn't in the deck, I was looking for it. Do you know the total daily traffic trips on this segment for a full day?
I don't off the top of my head, but I could look it up fairly quickly. Take me a couple minutes here. Park.
So a lot, right?
I'm guessing it's a lot, but I'm just curious to know what the number is since we can know that.
It is approximately 8,900 vehicles per day on Vernon. That was in 2021.
Great, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Any other questions for Carrie? Commissioner Felt?
Director T, can you, there are also some questions together on Better Together about a through lot. And I'm assuming if it was residential, that access for those 4 townhomes would be on the north side, on the quieter street. And, but for a commercial, you'd want those access on Vernon and not on the,
Correct.
okay. And Keys has sat empty for a while now, right? In the time that has been in the comp plan as residential, have you had anybody reach out to you and talk about the possibilities?
I have not.
And we've never seen any sketch plans for,
Nothing for residential.
yeah. You know, and there've been other smaller lots where there has been interest, the 44 Valley View. You know, so, right, so it just feels like this lot is just sitting there without anybody coming forward to use it as we've had it in the comp plan. Okay, and then another question, along with the sidewalk, can we recommend that that sidewalk be built as part of this, or recommend that it's built at the earliest possible convenience, that portion of it?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a condition that the developer would be responsible for that, but you could make the suggestion that
Yeah,
the city,
that we'd like to see it.
that you'd like to see the city build that, yep.
And funds for the sidewalks come out of an offshoot of utility fee?
The PAX fund.
The PAX
Right.
fund? So wouldn't it be taxpayer money doing that?
Potentially,
Well, I know.
right.
Okay, thank you. And I also noticed on Better Together about people kind of suggesting that it be a park. And, right, and suggesting it would be a park, that would mean the city would have to purchase it, and that would,
That's correct.
yeah. So it'd be tough to kind of recommend that, because I would be recommending,
The city does not control the property, correct?
yeah, yeah. And there are, I mean, there's Bredesen Park there, there's Highland Park, there's Walnut Ridge, there's a Yancey Park, there's a lot of wonderful parks there already. There was one small property that a group of neighbors purchased and the city financed, and they're paying the city back over 20 years. I don't know if anybody wants to do this. This would be a pretty hefty. The park question seems like a tough lift for the city to do.
Yeah,
For
to
this.
compare that site to those resident, commercial property, probably 3 to 4 times the value.
Okay. And another question another idea that was suggested to me was, under its existing categorization, the PCD for the auto, could this lot be used as a electric charging station?
Yes. In fact, we did have an inquiry about that.
You did?
Yeah, it was well over a year ago.
Okay,
But they decided not to pursue it.
okay. So it's a possibility, but only one question, and it's not the plan in front of us.
Correct.
So we're looking at this one. Okay. And you had talked about the small scale and kind of, this parking and these setbacks would be a condition of this, and nobody would be able to kind of add on to it without any existing variances. And there's a lot of uses that can be used in that PCD one, but I suspect of all those uses that could be in there, I was looking through them, right, there's only a few of them that would do a one-off. They'd all want to be next to other commercial areas so they can have traffic from additional buildings. So can you kind of talk about that again, about how these variances would limit the ability to add on or do anything kind of larger in the future?
Yes, so the required setbacks are the red line here. So any addition to the building would have to take place within that red triangle. Anything outside of that would require a variance. Even if they went up, it's still an expansion.
And even,
And so if they're expanding the square footage of a restaurant, then they're not going to have enough parking. They would have
Okay.
to come back for a parking variance. If it were to change to a retail or office type use, restaurant is going to generate the most parking stalls required. So potentially, that type of a use would meet our parking standards, but they would likely, hard to say whether an office building would want to, or an office use would want to move into that existing use, existing space, but they could.
thank you.
One of some of the comments on Better Together talked about access onto Vernon since it's a county road, and that this already violates sort of best practices for a county road. And I guess if you can educate me on if this was to change in any way, I mean, if they want to move the curb cut even 2 feet, does that sort of take it off the table as an option?
Widening the access may require a permit through the county. I don't think they could take an access away. But if they were expanding, that would likely require a permit through the county.
And does the county have any say, I guess, in a change of use with access onto their road?
They haven't indicated any issues with this project at this time, or any of the previous ones as well.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just to further clarify that, Carrie, right? It's if we were creating an entirely new access onto Vernon, would they then opine and make
Yes.
conditions, right?
Yes, yeah, they couldn't deny access if there were, if there were just one there today and we were proposing another one. They could have some say in that, yes.
Any other questions? Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Director Teague, for the presentation. Just a couple of questions regarding the hours of operation. So I think you mentioned that the applicant was seeking 11 to 9 during the week and then 11 to 10 Friday and Saturday. What is like the standard business hours allowed in the city today?
Yeah, I don't believe we have standard business hours. There are in regard to the liquor license, but we don't have any, at least that I'm aware of, standard hours that we would recommend. But with the rezoning and the variances that are proposed here, we would have the ability to restrict the hours for this use.
Gotcha.
What's the background of, like, what are you, I guess, trying to learn about, just see if there is a consistent standard and or reason for it? Just curious.
Yeah, just thinking how much control or could we decide on the hours of operation? You know, if the concern from neighbors would be noise, for example, busyness, and if in the city, let's just say it's 10 p.m. in most places, then this, since it's embedded in the neighborhood, we could consider shortening the hours from, I think, 11 to 7 p.m. or something like that, just because it's more embedded in the neighborhood. So I just wasn't sure if we had like a standard set of hours that would be like what we would measure from, and then we could pull it back from this new rezoning. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. And then neighborhood commercial, right? That's going to be a new tool for us because I don't think we have that today. And so we could potentially apply that new tool to different parts of the city where we have maybe similar kind of situation, spot that's too small to be a node. We could apply there. Do you have any sense of other areas in the city where neighborhood commercial could be applied?
Not specifically. We did the exercise about where we want to look at future small area plans. That's probably the best source of information that we have right now. So we'll consider that as part of the comprehensive plan that we'll start. sooner, well, a couple of years.
Gotcha. And then I saw in the packet too, that if we do rezoning, then the Metropolitan Council has to approve. Could you just talk about what that process would look like?
Yeah, that's the comprehensive plan amendment. So what we would have to do first is notify all of our adjacent cities of the comprehensive plan amendment, and they can weigh in. And we send that to the Metropolitan Council, and ultimately they approve or deny. Something as small as this, I can't imagine that they would deny it. But it is a process that we have to go through, and that takes a few months.
Gotcha. Just regarding alcohol, talk more about, a liquor license, right? Like if the applicant, we do say, yeah, this neighborhood commercial looks good, and they start the pizza business, and let's just say that we don't want to have alcohol to be sold here. Could we make that a requirement of the neighborhood node? Criteria, or could they apply for it separately and it could potentially be approved?
Yeah, it's a separate process through the city council. I'm thinking of, again, the town hall station that has a similar zoning, PCD 1. So not sure whether we can say no to the city code, that the liquor ordinance allows it in a PCD 1 district. So that one we might need some legal advice on.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's it for now.
Any other questions for Carrie? Commissioner Miranda?
Which, if any, PCD zoning allow housing?
Yeah, so to build onto that, so a PCD 1 zone does allow housing as a conditionally permitted use as long as you have retail on the first level. So I guess housing technically would still be allowed here, although in a neighborhood commercial zone. Well, they'd need a lot of variances because they'd need retail on the main level, and they'd need to park the housing above. So it would be a pretty tough one to.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I guess thanks for asking. Any other questions? See, none. Well, thank you, Carrie. Welcome the applicant team forward to give a presentation, a rundown of what we're seeing tonight. And then also if you could just state your full name, address, and stand for questions after that.
Hamer, I'm with Momentum Design Group, the architect who's working on the project with the applicant. So obviously you've seen this all before, you've discussed this all before. We were here this summer and had talked about these things. We really sort of took your feedback to heart. We got a lot of comments both here and at the city council level about wanting to add a place where neighbors could actually meet and gather. And so we did, unlike the original proposal, or at least the proposal in the sketch plan, we did decide to add in some seats. Like I said, not our original comment, not our original proposal rather, but it is something I think gives that neighborhood sort of gathering space an opportunity to occur. It requires us naturally to add some more variances. We had to, obviously add more parking. There was some changes that had to be made in order to accommodate that. But I think it's, in the end, it creates a better experience for the neighborhood, and it's less of a just a delivery and pick up sort of place, but an actual place where people want to meet and come. So that was kind of the feedback that we took, along with a number of the other sort of smaller items of adjusting some of the parking and the fencing and all that kind of stuff. So I think, we'll stand for any questions. The applicant is here as well if there are any questions for him specifically. But
Thank you very much. I guess, yeah. Questions? Maybe just go down the line. You got any? No, let's start over there. Commissioner Elker, you got any questions?
Sure.
All right, there we go.
Actually, just one question for you. So it's a cedar fence. I'm not a fence expert. Are there fence options which would provide more noise and light protection from from the residential neighbors to the north?
No, a cedar fence will provide a fully opaque sort of coverage. You know, there won't be gaps sort of in the fencing. It'll be a staggered fence that you can't really see through. So it would be a fairly solid visual sort of penetration. In terms of the noise, you know, the difference between a wood cedar fence and, you know, we could build a brick wall that was 6 feet tall there. It's not going to make as much difference in terms of the actual sort of audio sound crossing through that space. I mean, we don't have any outdoor patio seating. The patio to the north of this place of the building is for that the bike parking, the bike racks that we've added on that side. There's an existing patio there. We would actually be tearing that patio up and replacing it with a new one. It's weirdly shaped, and it doesn't have the right height levels that we would have to adjust the grading to. So that's the purpose of that patio, and not for seating.
Okay, thanks. I was just reacting, I think, to the image where I can see the tree through the fence, so I wasn't sure how opaque it actually was, but it sounds like it's going to be perfectly opaque.
The intent would be to be a fully opaque cedar fence. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, full of transparency there. Commissioner Padilla.
Welcome again.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions. So let's see, there'll still be enough room for the trucks, the trash truck and the delivery truck, your Cisco or food, US Foods to come in and...
Yeah, we've maintained that flow. We've redirected it so it makes for a more consistent circular pattern. But yeah, there won't be any problems getting the trucks in there.
And no thought, or you've dispensed with any thought about building up, even if it's not for seating, for storage? No longer consideration?
No, we've never discussed building up. It doesn't really do much. It's not much use to us on the second level.
Looking at my notes from last time, from June, I assume that being in a smaller space, you're going to have less production, right? Less revenue production, projections and things, or not? Or you think you're going to make up that?
Well, the real difference in terms of the plan is that the addition that we've added on the west side is larger now than it would have been if we had not added the seating on the inside. So essentially, the kitchen facilities remained the same as the previous plan, but we needed to make some adjustments in order to accommodate that seating area.
So your production capability is the same.
Correct.
Your seating capacity is less.
Well, the seating capacity is more now because previously there was zero seating capacity.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, my mistake. So then you are anticipating, with the same production and more seating, fewer deliveries and pickups?
Right. The actual seating is not very large. I mean, 20 people is not a very large number of people relative to the amount of deliveries and pickups that likely to occur here. So we don't really consider that to be a big effect on the overall production capacity of the restaurant.
Okay, so you consider that to be negligible?
It's negligible, yeah. I mean, obviously it has an effect, but it's not enough that they're concerned about it.
And I had written down last time that in the Big Willow Park location, 80% of your business was at dinner and 20% was at lunch. And are you anticipating same thing?
I would have to confirm with my client, but I believe that's what he said last time, and that would remain the truth.
I'm just concerned, if you could address that 80% of dinner, 80% of the business is dinner, but we're only seeing, I think, 15 additional trips during peak hours. If you could address if your business is not during peak hours, or how that kind of jives with the traffic study.
Well, I guess you'd have to ask the traffic consultant, but the numbers that he generated doesn't really, that's not something we get involved in. That's not something he's generating. And so yeah, it may be that the peak hours are actually not the peak times for us. I imagine the peak times for us would be a little bit later in the evening.
So what
than
is your
the peak
peak
times.
time?
So, I don't know, Jake, you wanna-
Hello, I'm Jake Schaefer, 6024 Hanson Road, Edina. Yeah, I'm not sure what the traffic report refers to as peak hours, but when I say dinner hours, I mean 4 till close. So it is a 5 hours, time period there. I'm not sure what the traffic study calls for peak hours. I'm assuming that's like rush hour time, which would be 4 and 5, I'm assuming, which is not our busiest time.
I think the reference there is to the peak hours of traffic
Right.
on the roadways, not the peak hours of their operation.
Right, I just assumed that there was some overlap, and one number was way high and one was way low. So that's the reason for the question. We talked about this last time, too. You are not considering any kind of a pedestrian entrance in the front, in the gate, in the cedar gate in the back, or in the north?
I mean, that was generally when we sort of started this process, the idea was to screen the property from the neighborhood to the back as much as possible. You can still walk around the sort of it's the long walk around the sharp corner of the triangle right now. But I mean, it's not that we would be opposed to a gate there. I think the idea was that we wanted to discourage sort of people from parking back in the neighborhood and walking onto the site more directly. Again, it's not from our standpoint, a cedar, putting a gate in the cedar fence would be acceptable if it was something you guys thought was useful and necessary. But to date, we haven't considered that.
It seems less of a neighborhood place to go if you've got to walk the perimeter of the property. But that's just a comment. That's it. I appreciate your tenacity, though, coming back. Thanks.
Any other questions for the, is that a yes or a no? Yeah, okay, Commissioner Felt.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to us last time, and to the city council, and doing all the work you've done. You have one other existing restaurant. This is, I suppose, for the owner in Minnetonka.
That's correct.
And it's kind of a very similar situation to this one. There's a few more commercial properties, but it's kind of out on its own in a residential area.
There's a small commercial node there, I would call it, and it's a larger footprint than this.
Okay. And it's in an area where the lots are larger, I mean, it's a residential area. It's a county road and residential
It's a
area.
residential area on Minnetonka Boulevard.
Yeah. And how long have you operated that business?
It'll be, I think we're at 9 years here in January.
9 years? Okay. And that has been doing well enough that you want to expand in your backyard,
Yep.
right? Can we, I don't know, can we talk about the landscaping plan a little bit? You've got a plan to kind of aggressively plant the edges?
Yes. Yeah, the plan is to basically to plant and enhance what's already there in terms of that on the north side. Any plantings we do on the north side would technically be in the right of way and therefore subject to removal or change by the city if they ever decide to do anything there. But then on the west side, that would be on our property, and so that landscaping would be secure.
Okay.
at that point. There's some additional landscaping on the front that we do just for aesthetic reasons.
Okay, and the landscaping in front would be all on your property line, so the
Right.
city can put their sidewalk wherever they
Yeah,
want?
and the city could, I mean, I think we drew the
Yeah.
sidewalk based on what's kind of there on the rest of the street.
Right.
But if you want a boulevard, then obviously you could put a boulevard.
Yeah, I think boulevard sidewalks are much more pedestrian friendly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do think, to Commissioner Alkire's point about the trees do help, I think, mitigate sound and kind of visual, any kind of lighting as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, good, I have a ton. I'm kidding. I just got one from the image that's on the screen. Kind of this sometimes happens, but just basic wayfinding. I appreciate kind of the traffic changes you made in design. This is great. But when I look at this building, it kind of feels like the front door is into that party room. Are you gonna make it more clear it's that north side?
Yeah,
It's just
primary
like how
entrance
you're
on the north
looking at
side,
that,
just the way the space functions. I mean, we want to be able to open up that party room so that it could theoretically be, directly accessed from the outside. But no, the primary route would be on the north side. It's not shown in this image, but there is a canopy that will be extending
Okay.
out over that. It'll have some color to it and some pop, and
Because when we approved the Caribou right next to here, that was a common question, what's the front door? Because just from that pedestrian experience too, or like your parking, just like making it easier and safer for people to just get where they need to go. So that was just a basic question I had. That's all I had for you guys so far. Thank you very much. So this is a public hearing. We've gone through the first two steps, staff presentation, applicant presentation, questions. So now we open it to the public for their chance to testify about this matter. Similarly to the last one, for those tuning in remotely, please call the following number, 312-535-8110. Enter access code 2633-784-7383. Enter password 5454. And then press star 3 on your keypad to get into the queue to speak. While you do that, and while we wait for everything to buffer and catch up, we are going to open it to those who are here in person first to testify. Same situation. You have 3 minutes to do so. State your full name, your address. When the light's green, go. When it's red, I ask you to wrap it up. You can come to either podium starting now. Welcome.
Hi there. My name is James Allen, 6105 Eden Prairie Road, Edina, and due to the time limits, I'm going to read this. The 6016 Vernon Avenue site is guided by the Comprehensive Plan for Medium-Density Residential. Surrounding land use are low and medium-density residential. The nearest commercial plan district is approximately 1 mile away from this small isolated property parcel in the middle of an extensive established residential community with children, pets, and adults using the quiet streets. This proposal does not align with some concept expressed during past council discussions that within the goal of establishing beneficial, viable commercial areas, the concept of node areas with expansion opportunities should be a priority. This site is clearly not a node. This site is nowhere the size of suitable commercial nodes, despite the 74-year usage for automotive gas and repair, originally and rationally placed on the old road to Mankato. Commercializing this site appears to be contradictory to Section 36-2 of the Edina zoning ordinance, quote, to control the use, development, and expansion of certain non-residential uses in the single dwelling unit district in order to reduce or eliminate undesirable impacts on such non-residential uses, by non-residential uses. Examples of reasonableness given by the Commission report do not appear to actually be reasonable, with the Convention Grill and Hello Pizza being in a much larger established commercial area of 44th and France. the town hall station being in the established strip mall area of Valley View and Wooddale. I'm confused a little bit by the continuing effort to assist an investor who may have made a poor investment in an overpriced property. As you said earlier, no one has come forward for townhomes or other uses. Well, the property value has a direct impact on that. And just to add another thing, I am totally in support of the Planning Commission and the City Council's efforts to take Edina into the future. I know there are some people that are not, but I am. I happen to be the founder and still leading a 30-year-old management consulting firm that does business in 21 industries in 13 countries, and I've been a lot of places. I visited 34 countries. Now, albeit some of that was as a weapons officer of a naval destroyer, but I've still been there and I've seen a lot of plans. I appreciate what you're doing to keep Edina up. To me, this is not one of those things that helps keep Edina up when it's a residential neighborhood with kids playing in the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Matthew Pepper, 6004 Eden Prairie Road, directly behind Kevin Keys. Just want to echo one of the significant, well, first let me speak that this has been less contentious than the last one. I thank the applicant for that. Three big points I wanted to make. One of the significant barriers is that the owners are asking for 1.25 million, and that's 2.25 more than what they paid for it. So I think if I'd submit to you that that's one of the big reasons, the barriers to residential. I also think it's unfair to show the buildable area without the expected variances. And as somebody who owns property to the north into the west, I would be the first one up here saying, I'll give you any variance you want, except on height, if you want to come and build residential to the south and to the west. Second, changing this to PCD1 opens the door to other uses. A larger restaurant can come in right behind. Cannabis could be another option that could come. So the owners of this site purchased a site zone for auto and medium density residential. It is not the Planning Commission's role to make them whole. So, and finally, the danger is not on Vernon, it's coming off of Vernon. So your question about the percentages, I don't think is the accurate one. And Commissioner Padilla, you caught that math issue. It says 181 additional ones, but only 15 per hour. There's something off there. I went back, I called, I said, where have we been the past 50 years? So I called Kevin. And Mr. Keys told me he had about 20 people per day. That's what we've been dealing with. And they were spread out from 8 to 5. So now we're saying we're going to put 181, or the report says 75% of that will be in the evening hours. And so 75% of that 181 is going to be coming in the evening hours when we have 40, 50 mile an hour folks. Accidents happen when the holes of the Swiss cheese line up. If you look at this parking lot, about half of the spots back up where people pull in. And so that's what we're going to be dealing with. We're going to have folks coming in off busy Vernon, people backing up, bicycles coming. There's a lot of Swiss cheese holes in this plan and in this parking lot specifically. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Barbara Bender. I live at 6105 Eden Prairie Road. When I moved there in 1998 from Indian Hills, I knew there was an auto repair shop there. It was pretty obvious. I also knew when I bought my condo that the property was guided toward medium density housing. So I bought with confidence that the integrity of the neighborhood would remain as it was. And so here we are, a number of years later, and it feels like that rug is being pulled right out. We have been fighting this for about 3 years. We're going into year number 4. I'm going to try not to repeat what has been said, but I think a large part of this problem is due to failure of due diligence on the part of the current owners. And we are being asked as homeowners to accept substantial offsets, rezoning, amending the comprehensive plan, and ignoring long-term neighborhood expectations of medium-density housing. I've watched over my 27 years there owners who have put millions of dollars into the purchase of their homes. There has been a lot of renovation, major renovation, improvements to the interiors and the exteriors of this home that make the current owner's $900,000 investment pale into insignificance compared to what the owners have done. So I'm asking you, do we really want a one-off commercial venture to detract from what all these homeowners have put into their property? I would start losing confidence in my ability to purchase property if we can have these one-off situations. And I ask you not to approve this proposal. And this has nothing to do with my view of the quality of the pizzeria. It has to do with expectations of owners in Edina to make investments in their own properties and hope that they will hold. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Mary Melander, 6105 Eden Prairie Road in Edina. Been an adult resident of Edina for 38 years. I actually grew up here and went to high school here, raised our kids here. My husband and I feel that this property should not be a restaurant, let alone pizza. We did a little driving today. There is a pizza place called Olives, 2.1 miles from the Kevin Keys site. There's the Devani's, 1.5 miles from the Kevin Keys site. There's about 8 more, either dine-in restaurants where you can get a pizza or takeout in Edina. And then not too far out of the range are some other places where you can get a pizza. We would like to see this property returned to either automotive, which we've dealt with for a long time. Like I said, I lived actually 4 blocks from where I live now, and it was always Kevin Keys Auto. Or we would like to see it residential. I could see townhomes like they've built in other parts of the city. It's a residential neighborhood, and we have our family and our friends come to visit us. They need to park on Eden Prairie Road. And if, like the architect said, they can scoot around the fence and, you know, come around if there's not enough parking, they will use Eden Prairie Road to park on. And then what happens to our friends and our family when they come to visit. So thank you for your time. I really would like to see this property not become a restaurant. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Pam Allen, 6105 Eden Prairie Road. In spite of the way it looks, we didn't hire a bus to bring us all over here tonight, but we are very concerned about this. I'd like to direct your attention to the picture. This was not in my notes, but we're talking about how the light would affect the neighborhood. Now, you've got a 6-foot fence, okay, that's me. If you look at the signage on the building and the light coming out of the inside of the building, this is going to be readily apparent to the condominiums directly to the west and to the neighbors to the north. So it will not shield them from that. It'll shield them from maybe a car, but it will not shield them from the lights coming out of the building. When the developer approached the neighborhood and we had a meet and greet at the gas station last summer, He said he would not proceed if the neighborhood did not want it. And a cursory review of the last 3 years, which you've all heard over the years, would certainly let him know that the neighborhood does not want this. Originally, it was a takeout location that we were presented with, and now it's a 20-seat restaurant and a patio. And I hate to sound dubious, but I've got to imagine they're going to, a couple chairs and tables are going to find their way out to the patio. And the hours are subject to the conditions of a liquor license, which will surely follow. And for this, we're considering making a new land use designation in the comp plan. The Valley View site has already been cited as 5,000 square feet less than this unit over at, or this lot at Keys, and it does have condominiums on it, or townhouses on it. So it can be done. This is a viable site for townhouses. Again, as Mr. Pepper said, it's a question of that the owner paid too much for the lot, and now he has to suffer the consequences of that. But I don't think the city of Edina should have to suffer those consequences. There's the question of would it be detrimental to the family neighborhood? When you consider hours of 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., and as other people have mentioned with kids and parking and so forth, liquor license will inevitably bring some crime to the area, and with more people parking on the residential streets, breaking into the cars. The congestion on Vernon, which is a parking lot now at rush hour. So if you add to that the trucks coming and going and the noise and the trash trucks coming and going. And for all of this, we have to ask for 8 variances and rezoning considerations for this. It seems a very heavy load to ask for getting a pizza parlor in a residential neighborhood. It indicates to me that this really is inconsistent with the best use of the property. Then the question was, or the position was made that it's an improvement to the existing site. To me, that's a very low bar indeed, considering this is an abandoned and a deteriorating building. So anything would, you could put a tent up, it would be an improvement. There's a statement of philosophy from the Planning Commission on page 10 that says to preserve and enhance the high residential quality in the city. I'd suggest to you that trees and a 6-foot fence do not diminish the adverse effects to our neighborhood, our real estate values, and our safety. This will alter the essential character of the locality. This is not an amenity, it is an unwanted intrusion. Gathering spots already exist, and all are in biking and walking distance. As mentioned before, Olive's Pizza, Devani's, Caribou Coffee, and Starbucks are 2 miles away. Finally, I would just say that 50 years of a grandfathered in limited commercial use is no reason to perpetuate that designation. It's time to adhere to the comprehensive plan and consider the reality of this residential area. The neighbors do not want a restaurant here and will not support it. I thank you for listening to me, and please do not approve this project with its many variances and inappropriate use in our family neighborhood. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. As much as I would really love a cute little neighborhood restaurant, like what's over in 50th in France, I just would have to encourage you to oppose this, and it breaks my heart because I have kids with food allergies, and I know your previous restaurant has the nut-free environment, which would really benefit me and my family and many other friends who have a nut allergy also that we know of. I'm very involved in the Food Allergy Network. Anyhow, I live at 6116 Eden Prairie Road. We've lived there for almost 2 years in December, and we bought it knowing that the Kevin Keys property was there, and knowing what the zoning was, et cetera, as this other lovely lady pointed out. I would really like you not to change the zoning. I have concerns about the street traffic and the foot traffic, because people will want to park on Eden Prairie Road if it gets busy, and I would only want them to be successful, so the traffic probably will increase because it'll be a lovely restaurant. But our road is so hard to back out of our driveway right now. I cannot tell you, I have to go so slow to get out of my driveway right now. So any increase in the traffic there would be an additional, problem for us in our particular home. Because people are going to want to park behind there, and they're going to want to walk around. Excuse me, sorry, I'm trying to be. The other thing that I am very concerned about is them possibly getting a liquor license. I'm kind of a nerd in terms of variables, and I think anytime you access alcohol, there's always someone who's going to probably not handle it well. And so we're increasing the variables of having potential alcohol abuse, coming down our road. And Vernon is already a very busy intersection. There's many people in my neighborhood, even people, because I walk every day, Vernon and Bredesen Park and the little path that goes behind this. And we would not want to have people drinking and driving. I mean, I'm very much against that. So, and I know they would want to get a liquor license. If that was my restaurant, I would want it too. So I can unfortunately concur with many people that have already stood up here and said they're really opposed to it. And it breaks my heart for them, but at the same time, I live in that neighborhood. I love that neighborhood. I love walking there with my dog, and I love walking with friends and family, and I just hope you can hear our concerns. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Hello.
Hey there.
My name is Tom Colbury. We live at 6004 Kmart Drive, about 2 doors away from Matthew. I think there's been a great detailed story of why we in the residential neighborhood here don't want this to change. The traffic, the possibility for parking on Eden Prairie Road, the concerns if people drink too much and gets into your little neighborhood. I mean, you'd have to see how many people of all ages. There's a lady on our street that has had a stroke, and she walks about 6 blocks every day, very slowly and painfully on Eden Prairie Road and up in Kmart, and there's kids and wagons and the whole deal. This is not a place that we need in our neighborhood. We don't need a place to go right here in this little neighborhood when there's nothing else. And my other big concern is what happens if you zone this to a new commercial thing, and then, like many businesses do, it fails or decides to sell and whatever, and then a new person comes in to put something new in there. Who knows what's going to go in there? And I don't think it's unreasonable as a residential owner in that neighborhood to be fearful of what comes in there and what that could do to our neighborhood. And one of the things on your list that Carrie talked about in terms of, what would make you not want to do this was if it would change the nature of the neighborhood. And going from an auto body shop that had 20 people a day maybe to having a restaurant coming in and out from 11 to 10 o'clock at night, maybe that is going to change the neighborhood. We're at the point where in a few years we're probably going to have to downsize from a single family home to something else. It will be in Edina, and I hope it'll be close. And even if it were close, say I got to move in with all my neighbors here, I'm not gonna want a pizza place there either, and it's gonna kill me, I think, on a resale value if this goes in. So I would add my voice to everybody else and ask you to please put something not commercial in that site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Mary Keneally Berdice, and I live on 6020 Kmart Drive. I'm born and raised in Edina. And I think the biggest thing, and Tom just said it, was I stole this from your slide, that one of the major considerations is, and it was glossed over, that this would not essentially change the character of the neighborhood. It absolutely would change the essential character of the neighborhood. I've raised my kids, and now I'm raising my grandkids. Well, I'm not raising them, but they're there all the time. They're with my husband tonight. And I think that's really important. I mean, the neighborhood itself, I know that one of the residents, Julie was mentioned, who has a stroke, who has had a stroke and walks every day. When we first moved there 20-some years ago, my kids said they should call this Kmart Trail, because at any given moment, starting even before light, there are people walking with headlamps and people walking their dogs and people on bikes and all of the above. I think another big concern, I'm just agreeing with what everyone has said, is that Kevin Keys has been there. Before it was Kevin Keys, I'm so old, I remember it was a Clark station. And Kevin Keys was never open in the evening, and he wasn't ever even open on the weekends. We tried to get him to work on things sometimes, like, could we just pick it up at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning? That wasn't gonna happen. So he was pretty strict with his hours, and that is completely different than a commercial situation where people are gonna be coming and going all the time. And if you just look at the specific residences, just to the west is all condos, it's seniors who are gonna have to be looking down on this, whether it's light, noise, smell, whatever. I just don't think it's fair to all those people that have bought those condominiums. The people just, I guess you'd call it north of the north side, have small children that are playing in their front yards. It's the neighborhood that people do bike in the street. My grandkids are in there learning how to ride a bike at the moment, and they're in the street. So it is that kind of neighborhood that's very, I guess, old-fashioned in the midst of Edina. It's a pretty old-fashioned neighborhood, pretty mixed, from seniors to kids to grandkids, you know, the whole 9 yards. I think the other big concern I have with the traffic is that we don't park on Eden Prairie Road once it starts to curve, because you can't get by in the winter. And after this was like any commercial, anything can hardly make that turn. We have multiple buses that go down the street. And so people do park down where the condos are because they have to visit their family or friends. But the bus traffic, just the school bus traffic, is another whole issue. And I guess my another concern is just that the Planning Commission has already researched all the things for the past adventures, or I'm not sure what you'd call them, that's not the word I'm thinking of, ventures, you know, to explore, and all of these things haven't changed because the building is a little smaller or there's few less variances. It doesn't matter. All of those things that were concerned, that the neighbors and everyone else in the Planning Commission was concerned about 3 years ago, are still there. They haven't gone away, and it is the only commercial site really anywhere. So I would request that you vote no and preserve our neighborhood, because this would drastically change the characteristic of that neighborhood, or character of our neighborhood, and we don't want that to happen. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in person that'd like to come forward? Or wouldn't really like to come forward, but probably still wants to, maybe? Or are we good? All right.
Saying that it's come to my attention through a text that the online, or the
virtual queue?
Yes, may not be working. So just as you get to that section.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go through it again. Thank you. And see no one else coming forward. Do we have anyone in the virtual queue?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So then I guess the reminder for people that would like to speak, press *3 on your keypad to speak. But we do have people in the queue, and we will go to them now.
Yep, and I'm gonna unmute this right now. Caller 2, if you could please start with your first name and last name, and then your address, including unit number, please. You are live.
Good evening. My name is John Wellborn. Thank you. My name is John Wellborn, 6008 Eden Prairie Road, 86 feet from the property, directly across from my house. I want to go back in history a little bit and remind the group. This was a restaurant. You were unanimous. You said no. Those parking issues, those traffic issues, given 181 hits minimum on site, takeout, and delivery, and you said no. Lighting, the smell, alcohol, late hours, you said No. People say, well, it's an eyesore. It's not the commission, the council, or the neighbors' issues to solve that issue. Poor planning on the owner's part does not constitute an emergency on any of ours. Let's go back and look at some of your quotes. You said too many variances, too extreme, and you said no. Too much traffic doesn't fit the neighborhood. You said no. It will specifically change the neighborhood. You said no. It's an awkward site that won't be safe for a restaurant. You said no. It's the wrong site for a restaurant. You said no. You said one lot does not a node make, and you said no. The comprehensive plan and the zoning change that you would approve to accomplish this opens a door that we cannot close. Anything in the future would require 3 people on the council to change it. Stick with the comprehensive plan. That's why we have a comprehensive plan, to deal with these unique situations that require this. You have said no unanimously. Nothing has changed. This is your plan. This is your zoning. These are your setbacks. These are your committees, your council, your commission, your words. You have said everything that has come up. You have said no. It's not your task to solve the owner's problem. As a homeowner, we moved in. We knew what that Kevin Keyes site was. We knew what the comprehensive plan was. And we banked on, as one of our commissioners has very clearly said and articulated multiple times on the record, the comprehensive plan is a promise made and should be a promise kept. Thank you.
That was the only person in our queue to speak, so we are safe to proceed.
Okay. Yeah, we have a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Public hearing is closed. Thank you, everyone, in person primarily, and those tuning in, for being here and testifying. It's not a comfortable situation to do so, so appreciate you doing that. Now it's a time where we turn back to us and we deliberate as a commission and make a recommendation for approval or denial of these various requests. So open it to discussion here. And if there's further questions for staff or the applicant, fair game still, they're here. Commissioner Hahnemann.
All right, I'll start. Like many things, this site is controversial, and there are lots of folks who have strong opinions on both sides of the fence. I loved the caller's last comment that the comp plan is a promise made and should be a promise kept. And I think it's interesting because it's the opposite side of the coin of many projects that come before us, where the comp plan directs a higher density, and we listen to the neighbors who would prefer not to have the higher density. I'm thinking of Lincoln and Londonderry and the site there and some of the sites adjacent to the Cornelia neighborhood. And those neighbors feel very strongly that the thing that has always been there is what should continue to stay there or in that category. I completely agree that the comp plan is a directional promise, but if this site, I wasn't here on the commission when the original restaurant proposal came. I don't know all of the details about the changes of hands and how the current owner has it, and that's not really my purview. But people call the city staff all the time with ideas to get a pulse on if a development is possible. And if no one is calling to ask if a development of housing is possible, regardless of the price, that is a little bit of an indication of what the market thinks is viable on this site. And I don't know the Valley View project at Valley View and Wooddale aside. I don't know how you get 4 houses on this parcel that aren't 2-story at least, which will create the lighting issues. Those houses are going to have to open onto, their driveways are going to have to open on Eden Prairie Road. And they're going to likely be rentals because condoizing and townhomes are really hard to develop in this point in time. So I'm really struggling with how do we, as a planning commission, and how does the city council think about in situations where the market isn't clearly indicating that the current use or the comp plan use is what people want, how do we think about that? Because it feels like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth depending on what the circumstance is. And I've said before, and I'll say again, our job is to think about the greater land use into the future and how we think about the social goods that come with a diverse amount of and kind of land use. I am sympathetic to the developer who came and asked us back in June for direction. We gave them direction on how we thought we could get comfortable. I don't love the plan. I would have loved a restaurant, but the neighborhood doesn't. So there's this push and pull, but I think we have to be transparent and work on being more consistent for both the residents and the homeowners, but also for people who want to move to our community and have an economic impact and be a part of what makes Edina so fabulous. And right now, it's hard to be an owner of a home, and it's hard to be a developer because you don't know on any given day which way the wind is blowing. And I'm just struggling with that. I am sure that if a car wash appeared tomorrow, the neighbors would also dislike that because of the traffic on Vernon. And I am sure that there are good uses in the retail space, and I'm sure there's bad uses in the retail space. So I don't think this is easy, but I think what I'm struggling with most is our lack of consistency, and I think that's hard for everyone involved.
Yeah, let's just go down the line. Maybe that's easy. Or if there is any questions you have for others, good discussion too.
Yeah, I went through Better Together, I think after lunch today, and I think there were about, I counted 17 for and 17 against in support, so it was pretty even across Better Together. You know, and that is public input too. I think there's a lot of people who would love to be able to walk with their kids on a lovely evening and pick up pizza, come straight down that road and come in on that sharp corner and pick something up. I feel like this is a fairly similar situation to the existing pizza restaurant in Minnetonka, which I think is pretty successful. And I understand this is a little bit of an odd duck piece of land, and it is, you know, the cost of the land or not. When I heard the cost of the land, I actually said, oh, you know, somebody could make some money building 4 nice condos with that. So I don't. And I think this has been in the comprehensive plan for about 20 years now. And in that 20 years before this land was purchased, nobody's ever come forward to build residential. So it's not the past couple of years, it's the past 20. And it's abandoned. And all we've been getting is kind of restaurant proposals or the green drop. This is a third of the size, a third of the seating of the previous restaurant. There's no second floor. But I do have, I'm wondering if we could make some additional recommendations about putting up, it'd be a city thing, no parking for the restaurant, no parking signs for the restaurant on Eden, is it Eden Prairie? And, you know, if the lights on the north side of the restaurant could be shielded so they're not shining off the property. You're indicating yes? Okay. And, you know, the bicycle parking area, I appreciate that it's kind of a good size and you're doing extra parking there. I think if there's 20 bicycles there and they're kind of moving around, it'd be nice to be able to bike and have a place that's large enough to kind of park multiple bikes without a lot of hassle. So I see that area as being parking for bikes, and I also see it as a place for teenagers to kind of go hang out. And then, can we make any recommendations about a liquor license, Director Teague?
I'm sorry, about
Can
what?
we make any recommendations about a liquor license or no?
Sorry, I still didn't
Oh,
catch it.
can we make a recommendation about a liquor
Oh,
license?
liquor license.
Yeah,
Whether they can or cannot have them.
yeah.
You could make a recommendation for the city attorney to
Look at it.
take a look at it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Bornstein.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. I wasn't on the commission for when the first restaurant was proposed, so I don't really know why that was objectionable, although I understand it was a little bit different than this one. I do remember the dry clean, what was that, green drop or whatever that was. That was kind of a non-starter for everybody. So just kind of coming at it with less of a history, I guess this is what stands out to me. It's kind of a unique culture, it seems like, in the neighborhood where this is like a commercial site. It's had a history of being a commercial site, but it seems like the people who live right by it really don't want anything commercial anywhere close to them, which is just an interesting dynamic in Edina. I don't know if that's true throughout the city or not, but you know, these are it anyway. So I think we need to hear that and try to respect it, but at the same time know that people are pretty divided on this one actually in this area, and a lot of people view it as an amenity as well. And so just trying, I think you both have kind of accurately touched on trying to respect and reconcile the diversity of views about what a neighborhood is. And but I guess what comes through the comments and the presentation is the site's always been commercial. It hasn't been residential. It's a commercial site. It's been a commercial site forever, and because of that, it seems a little bit less problematic to me to reconcile that with the comprehensive plan by modifying that to recognize a neighborhood commercial designation. Something's got to come in line with something else, and when the site has been commercial forever, it doesn't feel like a drastic change to me to make that type of tweak. It's a very unique site without a lot of precedent elsewhere. It is striking that no one has come forward with any residential plans. I mean, it's been around for a while. There's a lot of interest in building residential and apartments in Edina, including on small sites. Folks haven't come forward with this one. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's because nothing seemed buildable without variances everybody's talked about. Because nothing can be built without a significant variance, nothing of any site, of any nature can be built. The fact that it requires variances also doesn't really bother me. It seems almost necessary for anything. And so I'm not particularly hung up on the variance as being, you know, unjustified or problematic in this case from a planning perspective. And for those reasons, I do feel the opposition to it in the neighborhood. People want this to be more like maybe an Eden Prairie type of neighborhood, or like Hugo maybe, or something. I'm trying to think of like really quiet places where there's kids, but then there's this kind of commercial use, and it's in Edina, and it just doesn't seem extreme. This just doesn't seem like an extreme proposal to me. So there's some tension there. So for all those reasons, I think that an amendment to the plan for this is a unique site, and nothing has work. And so an amendment to bring this in line with its commercial nature isn't crazy. And the variances aren't crazy either. You know, I do commend the folks who put the project together. You guys actually listened to the feedback that was given and dramatically improved. I mean, folks, you're never going to get people to love the project who really don't want anything there. But at least you improved it dramatically over where it was before. So it's better now than it was before. And I think that's noted. And just, you know, for the residents, I mean, look, no one's going to persuade anybody who's for or against it to really change their mind, I don't think. I think you know what it's like when you really don't want something in your neighborhood or when you really do. But I was listening to kind of the parade of things that might go wrong if a pizza place opened. You know, trash, noise, crime, danger to kids in the streets, friends can't park anymore, light, people walking around who come from other parts of the neighborhood, more parking. I mean, plummeting investment value and things like that. I live near 44th in France, and we've got a pizza place and a burger place there. And like those things just aren't happening near me. And there are still kids in the street. There are people riding bikes. There are people with disabilities walking outside my home to the businesses. People are building massive homes. I mean, that's the problem. People are like investing too much money to be near some of these things. They consider them amenities. The parking overflowing really isn't happening that much. And this is a much denser commercial area, the likes we were talking about earlier with ground level commercial and some things on top. So I hear it, and I really do believe the folks here who say they really don't want this. But just kind of like stepping back and looking at it objectively, I also don't think it's outrageous or extreme. And I do think some of the previous proposals went too far. I think they were too far to be acceptable. So I think this is closer to the middle, and I'd be just interested in knowing what the other commissioners think about those different factors and how they tip the scales.
Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, you know, I would agree with some of the comments by Commissioner Bornstein. I'm just, you know, as I sit on this commission and as I get more experience working on different projects and engaging with residents, I could recall when we worked on the ADU project, the fear was that Edina is just going to turn into this massive multi-housing city that's just going to go crazy, right? And I think, you know, catastrophizing is kind of where we go when change happens quite a bit, but we still have to be sensitive to residents' concerns, right? And since we passed that ordinance, you know, there's been a trickle, right? And no one's really out there redeveloping the city in a major way. A couple of points. Yeah, no matter what goes on the site, there will be variances required. Just the shape of it, the layout of it, is going to have some kind of variance that's going to be required, even if we want to put in housing. And so the variance question, you know, to say that the comprehensive plan and we have all these variances, it's going to have to happen no matter what happens here. So I think that's not really a huge thing that I'm going to push back against, because I think variances will happen. I think about the alternatives that could go here, right? If we have, and if we bring back the auto shop, if we bring back the laundry mart, if we bring back what could be built here, and I compare that to what's being asked to build here, and I look at those two, I'm like, this is a way better idea. An auto shop has noise, it has gas smells, there's cars coming in, right? And so when I compare that now to a reasonably sized restaurant, and I compared it to which one would I want to be more excited about, and I see this one as being a bit more exciting. Right now, that site hasn't had anything on it for some time, right? It's just kind of been growing grass, looking like a blight, essentially. And, you know, developers have come, there's interest in doing something different here. And so I think we should seize the opportunity, right? but of course, putting some safeguards around the concerns of the neighbors. I see the world kind of more of a glass half full perspective than a glass half empty. So when someone says, this nice old lady who had a stroke is walking around, I'm like, well, she's going to meet her friend in the pizzeria. They're going to have a nice pizza. They're going to have a chat with some coffee. That's how I'm thinking, right? I could see this being a place where the neighborhood could gather around and be together. I see it as that kind of possibility, right? Versus a place that's going to attract a lot of, undesirables, for example. This could be a place for the neighbors to be excited and to get together. Those same kids who are riding bikes on that street could say, hey guys, let's go get a pizza. And they go over, they get a pizza with their friends, it builds community. So that's how I see the world, as an opportunity to do something positive. So I'm not super, change is hard, and we have to be smart about it, but I'm not fearful of it. I see possibilities. So my next point really is just, how do we assuage, some of these concerns by residents, right? So I think here's where we could work with the developer, work with the city, and try to talk through things like parking and traffic, right? We had the traffic study. They looked at it. They seem like it's reasonable. We could push and inquire more about that to see if we could assuage any concerns there. The alcohol question, which, if we talk about a slippery slope, that's a thought that people get. How do we address that legally, right? With the city attorney to say, hey, alcohol may not be the greatest thing to have in this location. And so if we ever have that request come up, we could try to limit that. That might be something a developer would be open to. So I think we should talk about that. Noise, and, parking and fencing. Fencing to limit folks from parking on neighborhood street and walking across and that kind of stuff. We could talk through that. So maybe not a fence or a door in the fence that connects Eden to the restaurant, right? Just keep it as a fence, prevent people from parking on that street and walking over. Those are the kind of things that could help reduce the impacts, essentially. Now, with regards to the comprehensive plan amendment, and I think I heard comments on promise kept, right? So yes, right, this was an item that was since the 1980s. That's over 40 years ago, right? We all know change happens. The world has moved on. There's so much things that are different now today than it was back then. And so as a commission, right, we have full discretion over trying to think through this, and then the city council ultimately makes that decision. So I think we're deliberating, right, of how much of an impact this is going to have on the community realistically, right? Not it's just going to be a catastrophe, but what's realistically going to happen here, and what's the possibility here for the city? So I'm a little bit more positive with this idea. When we compared it to what came first, and then we didn't, with the first restaurant idea, that was too much. I think we felt that. When the green drop idea came, I was like, nah, I don't think we want that either. This one kind of comes in the middle, right? It's a little bit better. But how could we now take this idea and approve it in such a way that it limits the concerns for neighbors, that it's more palatable? And I want us to think more positively and more half glass full on this one than half glass empty. And that's kind of how my thinking is on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Padilla.
Well, I'll start with the obvious, which is this is a very difficult parcel, and there's no easy solution and there's no perfect solution. So we have to go into this decision being well aware of the fact that there's no perfect solution, and also well aware of the fact that the comp plan does contradict some of the other things that we want to do and is not always aligned with what we are trying to get accomplished. I do want to address the gentle citizens that spent their whole evening here tonight, and I fully respect what they said, and it brings to mind my first interaction with the Planning Commission back in the 90s when there was a church that wanted to sell their land to an establishment that was going to put up senior living with memory care. And it was a very large parcel, and City Hall was a different building then. And, but we packed the gallery, and the public hearing went on for hours with everybody speaking out against building this senior facility. And it went on for the longest time, and they went ahead and, in spite of probably hundreds of people's protests, they went ahead and the church sold the property, and they built the senior living facility, much to the neighborhood's chagrin. Fast forward 5, maybe 10 years, it took the neighborhood to accept it, and they were afraid of too many cars, too many parking, people, ambulances coming, people walking around, particularly since it had a memory care facility. Well, what has happened in the years since is it's become an integral part of the neighborhood. It is where everybody in the neighborhood gets their first job. All the teenagers work there as servers and cleaners, and they can walk there. And people end up putting having relatives or friends there, and it's convenient, and it is well maintained and well kept up, and it has become a very, very important operational and proud part of the neighborhood. So that is the context that I would bring, and that I would hope is something that we would see in neighborhoods as they change throughout the city. So having said all of that, and having lived through that context and that experience, we keep hearing about how parents and families are so stressed now. They're all burning the candles. There's no time. You see how in the supermarkets, everything is to go. Everything is prepackaged. And part of that is pizza. I think pizza places are just becoming ubiquitous in every neighborhood. There are 2 that I can walk to in my neighborhood. So I think, to Commissioner Bornstein's point, Commissioner Smith's point, this is something that we have to look upon as a positive thing. And it will be nice to be able to walk just a few blocks to get a pizza and make dinner, rather than have to get in the car and drive. And as far as the comprehensive plan amendment, I think it is warranted, as I think the variances are as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda.
I won't repeat what Commissioner Bornstein and Commissioner Padilla said, because I think they made some really good points about how non-scary this really will be. I'm a little disappointed that the developer actually said that the kitchen size is the same, because I was a little worried about there being too much traffic here. But again, as Commissioner Padilla pointed out and others point out, this is not an ideal spot. One of my big concerns from the very beginning was that I was against the original restaurant, not because of its size or because it was a restaurant, was because the idea that we're still building single-story, single-use buildings with surface parking lot is something that should absolutely not happen anymore. But I guess I've come around to the fact that this is a very tiny, very weird lot. And I just don't think this is going to be anything horrible. My big concern, however, is the land use designation. And I think the city council is pushing for commercial rather than mixed use, which is what we've historically done. And I think that's a very big problem, and I would not vote for that. I think the land use designation should be mixed use, and PCD1, as I asked Director Teague, allows both commercial and housing, and those match together.
Can you elaborate further with Carrie, just about why? I know you're just kind of being succinct about it, but just so everyone can understand maybe more of the context about why that is your biggest concern.
Well,
And maybe the other one's a better opportunity. I don't know.
So commercial, okay, so if this is, we're going back to, and this is a problem that I'm dealing with, which I'll get into in commissioner comments, about the Lincoln and Londonderry plan, is that it seems that the city is pushing us back into the 1970s and pushing for single-use zoning, which is something that the city for 10 or 20 years, ever since I lived here, has been getting away from, and now it seems like the tide is turning, and we're pushing for things that we haven't pushed for in the past. So a mixed-use guidance of land use would allow, because the thing is, we don't want it to be just this property, right? So one of the things we talked about at a previous meeting a few months ago was which we studied, which was, areas of change within the city. And this is a county road, it's a major road. Transit has decreased on it, or been eliminated on it recently. But eventually it's gonna come back, and much like the E line on France Avenue, it basically connects what's going to be the Green Line extension to, the light rail. It's going to connect to the light rail. So it's a major county road. There should be more development on it than there is. It's already guided multifamily, right? So this lot may be too small or too awkward to be multifamily, but if we're going to change, things set precedences. So if we change it to commercial, then there's going to be pressure to change everything along that commercial, and I think that's a mistake. We don't want people to live in one part of the city and, work in another part of the city and shop in another part of the city. That is the past, and that's not the way, that's climate change denial if you think that's the way the cities are going to exist in the future. And so it's imperative that we have this as mixed use, and then that would match with PCD1, which allows mixed uses. So that's my concern. So that's my main concern. Otherwise, I think I agree with most commissioners here that, or all potentially, that as a project, I'm sort of reluctant, but I think I would go ahead with this project.
Just elaborating on that a little bit. I mean, what would that look like, Carrie, if we pivoted or if there was enough support to go for, say, PCD1 over neighborhood commercial? Is there any different requests at play? Is there different restrictions?
I think I may have an idea for you to consider as a condition to address Lou's issue. Our existing mixed use categories in the comprehensive plan, they're all big areas. So that wouldn't be appropriate for this site. But with this amendment, the neighborhood commercial designation, you could recommend adding for primary uses, small scale retail commercial uses. That's what it reads as proposed. Small scale retail, commercial, and residential uses. That could turn it to mixed use because the zoning allows that.
Sure.
Lou, would that make you comfortable that adding and housing to, I'm really excited about this neighborhood commercial option. So I'm just trying to understand if it was modified to have that, would that make you comfortable, or is there still something that we're missing?
No, it needs to have, so we can't require, retail's become so problematic that you can't require it and housing in every project, right? So we know that, so that's okay. But as long as it allows either or both, it can't say one or the other, is my concern. It should allow both.
I guess why I was asking about restriction, because it came up when we clarified it for PCD1, is we would want, if there is retail that or if there is residential, it wouldn't occupy the first floor and then take over that potential for mixed use, right? So that's how PCD1 operates, allowing, right, a conditional permitted use for housing as long as it's not on the first level and kind of makes the site mixed use. Are you more just about the whole corridor being mixed use, or this particular site as a precedent? That's just what I'm trying to understand.
Well, this will set a precedent, right? So, because this is the first lot that we're going to be changing. So I think it's important to get it right, to make sure they do both. So if you have, a lot of apartment complexes nowadays have all sorts of stuff on the first floor that's not housing, but is related to the apartment complex, the community rooms and gyms and all that sort of stuff. Would that still be allowed?
That wouldn't. I believe our language that we put in the code was pretty clear that it had to be a retail use on that first level.
Okay. Is this going to prevent things from being built in the city if we?
This would only apply to this one site. It's the only site that would have this designation.
So we're trying to get away from that, right?
We're going to update our comprehensive plan in 2 years. This gives another option. We could.
I mean, are you
this
trying to get
designation
to the, like, 44th in France, like the Burgers, Bagels, and the Caribou with one office or one apartment above it, like that old school kind of zoning option that we don't really have short of a PUD currently?
I mean, yeah, that's the direction the city's been going in for 15 years, since I've been here, is mixed use.
So yeah, then wouldn't PCD1 be more appropriate for supporting what you're saying versus just adding and housing? Because then it's just maybe too open. Or are you okay with it being open? I just know we had issues with just allowing it to be any variation of the two. And we're
I'm not
even
catching the nuance there. I'm not sure what would be so different.
It was as if in a PCD1, say like this was a restaurant, someone could then come in and just build townhomes there. That's what it would allow for with neighborhood commercial with the and housing. But if it's PCD1, you'd have to have retail on the ground level with housing above. So that's the nuance between the two. As far as future options go, which again, we're not there in what we're talking about, but.
And the issue is that, I'm remembering it more as we talk about it. There was an ambiguity, there was actually a contradiction in some of the statutory language around what could be built in a PCD1. And when we looked at what was in PCD1, it was basically just 50th in France, 44th in France, and other commercial nodes, all of which are currently having, that highly desirable commercial use underneath something maybe residential. And the fear was that developers would start moving into these areas, knocking down old buildings, and putting exclusively residential options in that zoning district, and so the ground floor would be like the staffing office, or just like the dumb stuff that we don't really like seeing fronting streets, and we want to protect the integrity of those districts that like define Edina and make it special. And that's how that ambiguity got resolved. It had to either go, you could build everything down like residential from the ground floor up, or you need to keep a commercial use in the ground floor and you can build residential above it. And that's how that got resolved. So I think that's what you're referring to, right?
So PCD1 allows for that.
Yeah.
If we modified this, it could say, if you say and or housing, it could then turn into only housing.
I don't know. I don't believe it would. This is just the comprehensive plan designation. I think this makes it clear that you could do the housing in a PCD1 scenario as long as there's retail on the first level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. All right. And the question, I think, was for you, Commissioner Miranda, whether that raises a concern,
Because the land use, because I was trying to distinguish land use from zoning. And so as the land use designation, it seemed okay to me, right? That's what we're talking about?
Okay, good. Yep, we're clear.
We okay with that?
Yep. Sorry for muddying it up, but.
Just looking through my notes here, see if there's anything I can say that hasn't already been said. I guess generically or at the highest level, this isn't necessarily the project I wanted, but the market has been stubbornly resistant to what I want for decades now. So I'm interested in moving ahead. I think the commissioners have done a great job of describing the good reasons to do this. So rather than rehash all that, 94% of which I agree with, I think we should just spend some time talking about what conditions or changes we want to make.
Thanks. As far as, Yeah, I pretty much agree with a lot of the things shared tonight. You know, it's anything different like this is going to be tough, especially if you move in a place and you expect something to kind of remain the same and something changes. It's just going to be difficult. And I definitely see this. And that's and what the ask is resembles that, right? We have a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning. We have full discretion. And when we have full discretion, we have the full breadth of our opinion as well as residents. So we're naturally going to disagree on some fundamental aspects of what this project is and why it can make sense or it doesn't make sense. So I think fundamentally for me, just starting at the root, is since this was first approved, I think Commissioner Mirandis, I think this might have been the one, the restaurant, you're like, this is a kernel of a great idea, but then everything else is bad about it or whatever, something. To me, it wasn't as extreme. I've always liked the idea of a restaurant here, and I've always thought, someone said, you know, it opens a door to this, and I guess I see that in a similar way of like, if this turns to residential, that door is closed. This allows a foot to kind of hold the door open to allow for other types of change along Vernon over time where it might make sense. And why it might make sense for me more than others is like how I would approach just like where the ideal place to live is. And I know a gentleman here has been all around the world, and I think of the best places I've been in the world, they're places you walk everywhere, you know, or you maybe bike, but you have options wherever you're at to kind of satisfy all these different needs and desires. It's not to just be very remote in a particular spot. And even though you have a pizza joint 2 miles away, that's not something you can comfortably and safely walk to or quickly do so. As far as like prior context, I grew up in a spot in a neighborhood just like this where we had a retail node about 1.5 miles away, but there was this weird one-off like auto body shop that used to be an old little tiny city that still had this this remnant of like its old main street crossing as just one auto body shop. They ended up turning it into like a little panini bistro. And like it got a lot of people in the neighborhood to just walk there and bike there that would otherwise drive that 1.5 miles farther to that node. And it didn't create such a huge stir. And currently my grandma lives in very similar housing that is nearby this one, but where she lives is, you know, Ford Parkway, and the streets near it are streets kids are playing on safely because Ford Parkway is the busy road. Vernon here is the busy road and going to remain the busy road. That's where the traffic is, the volume, the pull. And so like I could see this happening. I mean, she has a Dairy Queen literally, or it used to be a Dairy Queen right next door to her building. And so like residents, you know, go down there and they get ice cream. You know, they walk farther, and it's kept my grandma and all of her friends active, walking around the neighborhood. Those are the kinds of things fundamentally I want to see in our city. So like with my full discretion at stake, I want this kind of thing in more places. Where I currently live, the streetcar 70 years ago stopped running service. If it were still running a half a block away from me, people would use it, but that chance is gone. So I see this as kind of like this last opportunity to kind of preserve something that has always kind of been commercial, but like enhance it in a different way where instead of just having cars getting worked on, it's a place for people to come to and gather. So like fundamentally the why, and like that's why I'm behind this. I think the how, Commissioner Bornstein kind of hit it. It's like we're bringing the comprehensive plan in line with the zoning that it's always been. Kind of those fundamental hows of like the variances, the rezoning, comprehensive plan, that makes sense. And I'd like to thank the applicant team for some of the other details of the how, because you have changed what we've seen before. One thing that I definitely like, because it was a specific item I was thinking about, and this came up from a council member too, about the 2 points of access into this through lot, and how it should only be one unless for safety reasons maintain two. I think if you eliminated one and just had one entrance here, then you're gonna need some way to turn around in the site, and you're gonna further constrain what you can do in the site. But you had the entrance and exit the other way around, and we discussed that, because if someone pulls in and can't find a spot, or they're leaving, but if they can't find a spot and they wanna circle back, then you're turning right instead of turning left across traffic. So there's like these subtle how details that you guys have calibrated here that I feel like are just really making it a sweeter deal. So I appreciate that. Safety-wise, I think we're fine, and we're bringing a sidewalk into this mix, and it's the only stretch of Vernon that doesn't have it on that north side. So like by doing this, we're prompting that change with the city. And I also would just second kind of Commissioner Felt's suggestion to the city of just adding like no restaurant parking signs on Eden Prairie Road. I think that's just like a small favor. Like it doesn't stop someone that wants to park there and risk whatever that means, but at least it'd be a gesture and a signal to those neighbors that like people ought not to park there to use the restaurant if it starts to become full. That's kind of segueing into some of the details, but so far I think condition-wise, I'd approve it or support approval like as it's written, with the modification of the housing piece added to the neighborhood commercial. Now, what you got?
I'd hate to open a can of worms, but the no parking signs concern me a little bit, just because inevitably you end up with a problem of where to stop. Because if you have 100 yards of no parking signs, that's just going to push, if there is a problem, which I personally don't think there will be, but if there is a problem, it just moves the problem 50 yards up the street each way. So then you go, oh, we better go 75 yards. I just don't, it seems like a can of worms to me. I'm not sure that's something I can be accurate or precise about.
Sure, yeah, and I don't see that as a condition for approval, maybe more of like a discussion point with the city. 'Cause, I mean, we've seen it in when Red Cow started having the spillover in Minneapolis, they started putting the signs and it just helped.
Yeah, but they did that after it became clear it was a problem. I mean, and I think that could guide where you put that signage.
Okay.
That's a good point, like with some guidance from transportation as to how one does that properly.
I wouldn't just say let's not consider. I think overwhelmingly some of the negative responses, the effects it has in that neighborhood, that I see these as two very separate.
And there was the one comment about that corner being dangerous, about people not parking on the corner because the buses had a hard time going around it, and nobody parked on the inside or the outside corner as the Eden Prairie Road turns into the adjacent one. So I think there was some safety concerns about that corner.
I'm glad you brought that up. Any other discussion points? Yeah, Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, you brought up the sidewalk, and I think the city doesn't always do this, and I don't know why. Actually, the county doesn't either. It's important that the city build the sidewalk at the very edge of city property, or the right-of-way, or whatever. So the city tends not to do that, which, landowners like because, they have more property or whatever. But really, for future uses of the road or whatever, you want to build a bike lane or whatever, if the sidewalks aren't at the very edge, if they're closer to the street, then it makes it harder to put in infrastructure like bikeways and stuff. So I think we should.
Farthest away from the street.
Yes, away from the street, closest to the property line, at the property line, basically.
Yeah, and I know it was noted in the staff report, right, to, instead of what's shown, but to have a boulevard sidewalk. So I guess, would we want to just condition
But more
that?
specific, yeah, more specifically, yeah, at the property line. Because the city just redid Blake, or, let's see, is it Blake or Interlochen? It's Blake Road.
Yeah.
Because it goes right to Blake. And they put it they even put in, multi-use path, and they put it away from the property line. And so I just think it's a bad idea.
It's a really good idea. I think that's a really good idea and a really good point to make, especially since it's a commercial property now, and you're not offending a resident, you're not encroaching on their space to do it, and it sets a nice precedent for this. So I just really appreciate you calling that out. Yeah, didn't think about that one at all.
So add that as a condition, or to point 9.
Yeah, any comments?
Any thoughts about hours of operation? Anything that we want to?
I was just going to ask, do we typically put hours of operation as a condition for a business? I mean, I would be in favor of, I know it's an unpopular opinion, striking that. I feel like that's the wrong way to address that concern.
I know we haven't. It's just come before us for like Putt Shack because they had a outdoor rooftop dining, and because they had a different time frame, and we wrote that into the code for rooftop dining only. Otherwise, it doesn't ever touch us. Like, that's never something we.
I think with Putt Shack, they were all 11 or 12, and that everybody felt was kind of a little bit late, whereas I think you're talking 9 and 10, right? That's more in line with kind of standard restaurant hours.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like.
It's our job either.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like a concern we need to speak to, but like the Devani's right here has been open to like 9 and 10. If you go in there around 9 or 10, it's quiet. It's not what you expect. It's going to be this raging party till 10 p.m. every night. But that's not in our purview, and I would recommend to the city council not to further restrict that and allow the property owner that freedom.
So that would be removing condition 10 then?
Condition 10 just deals with construction.
I mean, it might be different. Originally, they talked about maybe putting a patio where people would dine. Remember we talked about that? But that's been removed. I think respecting the neighbor's concern about noise, if we did see a large patio where people were going to be out dining to 10 p.m., it might be worth talking about more, but because it's all going to be enclosed and inside, I just don't think people are going to hear that. I just checked the hours of the Convention Grill and Hello Pizza. Those close at 9, I think. And I can just tell you anecdotally, I hear nothing from them because they're enclosed. If they were outside, I think we'd want to reconsider. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Just to go back to the alcohol question, I know the city attorney would look at it, but what exactly are we asking about that? Is it that the city attorney is going to think about a restriction when it comes to alcohol licenses, or the applicant would apply for it and the city council decide at that time?
Yeah, I would. I guess the question was if you wanted to prohibit alcohol from being served. That would be the question. They have the ability to ask for a liquor license. And that decision ultimately is made by the city council.
And I'm starting to think that's not a land use question, and maybe not in our purview too.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it almost, like our role here is to just kind of try to be a little bit neutral and objective and just weigh in on this from a planning perspective. And then let folks take their concerns to the council and let the council make the final decision guided by our perspective. So I think on these issues, it's best to stay out of the liquor license, but if folks have concerns about that,
But that
Or
would
their
be a
concerns-
separate matter beyond these approvals regardless,
These,
right?
I think people here are engaged, they're going to raise those concerns, and they're going to find the right forum to do it, so.
Yeah, it's similar to the town hall station where they applied for the liquor license, and there were some objections to that, but that one did get approved. A little further away from single-family homes, but.
I think it's scope creep on our part.
Creep? No, okay. Agreed. Is that, you agree with that? Or do you have any other questions with that?
No, I think this is just good feedback. It's just to kind of put it out there so residents know that we're thinking
Yeah.
about these kind of things, and here's how we're going to handle it.
Thank you.
But overall, I think it's a glass half full kind of guy, so I'm very positive to this.
I guess regarding just one last detail, I brought it up, and I just encourage when design goes final to make it very apparent where the front door is. Like, if it even makes sense, if there's somehow room to even turn that door to face, you know, the whole parking lot, so when it opens, all that sound's not spilling out either. Just a thought. We just saw it, like we've seen when it's not clear, just it creates issues. Okay, that's no condition, but a friendly suggestion. Welcome a motion with any conditions, if there is one.
So are we, the motion to approve with the comprehensive?
Yeah, I might recommend that you split them out, a comprehensive plan be the first motion, and then the rezoning with the variances.
Okay. So with two separate votes then too? Okay. Does that make sense? Someone have a motion for the comprehensive plan amendment first?
I'll make a motion to approve the comprehensive plan amendment.
Second?
With
the changes to add housing?
Yes, with the changes to add the word "and housing."
Great.
I second that.
I'm sensing where this is. Okay, I guess sensing where this is going. I don't know if we need a roll call for this. Just all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next would be the. Yep.
Zoning, site plan, and variances, that can all be done in one.
And one, okay.
So motion to approve rezoning, site plan, and variances, subject to the findings stipulated in the staff report.
Second.
And then was there a condition to be specific with the sidewalk?
Oh.
Pushed to the property line?
Adding a recommendation to have the sidewalk as close to the property line as possible, next to the property line.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? I see none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you to applicant team and for all the residents coming in. Wish you the best luck in the process and wish the immediate neighborhood the best transition to a different type of community there. Thank you. All right. So that concludes our public hearings for the evening, and we're on to chair and member comments. Sure.
Thank you for your thoughtfulness. If the council does approve this, we haven't given up yet, but if the council does approve it, we hope that if there are encumbrances, oh, I know I'm not supposed to schedule, but we hope that we do have the privilege to come back and do two things: compliment you on what will work, what does work, and confront you on problems. I've been down this drill before. I've been a resident of Parkwood Knolls for about 40 years before I came into the condo, and that was always open. Matter of fact, the stop signs on Dovray Drive coming in those two locations was our doing. And that what happened is the state supported it because the downside of Dovray was built illegally as too great a grade. And the city council, not the mayor at the time, he threatened me. But the city council took it to heart, said, we'll solve that. 2 weeks later, it was solved. So I have confidence. I really appreciate
Thank you.
allowing me to talk when I'm not supposed to talk.
Well, we appreciate your involvement.
Thank you. Just, it's part of our chair and member comments, and we try to hold time at this moment also to just get insight from ourselves and you on ways to improve the process. So like, I mean, I'm thinking like community comment period, if we could be more intentional with like checking in on projects every 2, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, just to see, compliment, confront. I like the approach there. We definitely want the accountability and the best for Edina as well as you.
I have an international reputation for being a pain in the neck change advocate. But with that comes new information flexibility.
Love that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So on that note, other chair member comments. I know Commissioner Miranda had something he was going to discuss.
Yeah, so I was planning on coming here and getting all excited and saying that the Lincoln and Londonderry, not the final plan, but progress report is going to be reported to City Council next week. And, but some weird thing has happened in the past couple of weeks. So the consultants who I've been praising just incessantly for the whole entirety of the thing presented kind of a rough draft of what they were going to present to City Council at a what do you call it? It wasn't the whole committee. It was just the steering committee, I guess. The
working
consultants. Just the consultants and city staff and the chair. So just us. Okay. And, you know, towards the end of that, I had a number of comments. I mean, some of the things they proposed just seemed bizarre. And so, and some just weren't justified by any of the input received from the public. It kind of like went too far. So, so that was fine. So I gave my feedback, and then we're supposed to present next week. And so in the first meeting and this meeting, I've pushed to make sure that we have a finished document to give to council before the meeting so that council can't say, oh, we didn't know about this or whatever. So apparently they finalized, or they came up with a almost final version at the end of last week and sent it out to city staff, but forgot me, the chair of the committee. And then I found out yesterday, and today it's like, okay, well, you have until end of today to give us your feedback. And it's not like a 100-page document or anything, but, you know, I'm a citizen volunteer. I'm not paid to do this. And I was working on the Planning Commission tonight, which is equally important, if not more important. Well, equally important. So I just find it really odd that I was forgotten and that I was suddenly given this so I said, I'm not going to, I don't want to delay this because I'm sure that's what the city council wants. I don't want to delay it, so this should go through and presented to council, but I'm not giving my imprimatur to it because I didn't have enough time. And there wasn't enough time to give them feedback to change it because I needed to know Friday, so I had the weekend to work on it. So that's a little bit of friction I'm having with the steering group or whatever. The two of the things, and I just looked at it quickly. I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb or anything, but the two things that I mentioned were not addressed. You know, one of which is putting a park on an intersection, which makes absolutely no sense. An intersection like a block away from the highway off-ramp. So that's a no-go for me. I don't know how anyone would conceive of something like that. And when the business people that we interviewed said, you know, traffic and getting in and out of the coffee shop and stuff is an issue. People drive too fast. And you're going to put a park on the corner of an intersection? That makes no sense. The second thing was that, you know, personally, I think we should have, you know, apartment buildings and mixed use there. The neighbors were pushing very heavily for something no taller than a townhome, right? So, you know, I worked with that or whatever. And the consultants came back with like 1970 style townhomes, you know, 3 little groups of townhomes, separated by a lot of green space, whatever, kind of like which is across the stream there and the creek. And it's like, okay, well, residents don't want height, I get it, right? Because it's right next to, you know, a low density or medium density housing area, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a continuous row of them. And again, that wasn't addressed. Maybe there's 2 versions. I haven't had time to really look at it. So, and then one reason I picked on the whole commercial district thing here in tonight's thing was because now they're proposing that for, because, you know, we can't build because we can't build housing because of the sewer capacity or whatever. And so they want to zone that, you know, commercial only, you know, small, you know, low density commercial or whatever. These things all need to be talked about. And we're having a meeting next week, you know, our group meeting is going to be next week after the city council presentation. So these things can be discussed, but I'm just a little concerned that this is what's being presented.
Why are you hesitant to delay? Sorry, I missed that.
Because delaying the project just...
I mean, delaying 2 weeks is...
No, because this is a city council work session. So they're very hard to get. It takes weeks or months to get one of these things.
Missed that it was a work session.
Right. And the other thing is that, and the city council's already tried, or city, I'm not sure it was council or the city manager, has already tried not to get me reapproved for this position. So if it gets delayed, then I won't be presenting it. I won't be chair anymore when we present it to city council. So
there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
A couple of questions I have. So one, you mentioned the sewer thing. Is a small area plan not thinking longer range past that?
So and that's the thing, we're going to have a short-term and a long-term plan, right? I mean, like other ones, like Grandview, I know had a short, medium, and long-term, whatever.
Okay, and then, I know this is you, but what about consensus among the rest of the working group? I know we used to have co-chairs and they got reduced, you know, whatever, and then, but I mean, is there similar consensus to some of these
Well, we haven't met as a
discrepancies?
group, right, to discuss these things. I mean, there've been some emails back and forth, but, so, again, I'm not saying it needs to be the way that I want it to be. That's not the point, but that I didn't have the time, you know, to review it.
Yeah.
And so, and that none of my, you know, nothing was changed at all, which I found surprising. So.
And I think the other issue is instead of having, we went down to 1 chair, and it's Lou that's been in all of these core meetings. I mean, the rest of us show up to the monthly meetings, but we don't check in on a regular basis. And so you're all of you're the brain trust for this. Yeah.
Right. So, and I don't, you know, it's mostly city staff and consultants. I mean, I'm just kind of in the background because it's really a meeting between them, right? I'm just there to listen, occasionally contribute, you know. And so in this case, I thought it was something that was important enough to be, you know, like, whoa, where is this coming from? You know, so yeah, it's not like I'm imposing, you know, I'm not like saying I'm chair and you have to do what I say, but I thought I brought up some pretty good points, and I think it needs to be discussed more. Well, it should have been discussed more before presenting to the city council, but now I don't think we have the time.
I'm just curious about process, and I just, from experience rewinding back to 44th and France, like our small area plan working group, like rarely interfaced with staff. It was pretty much us and the consultant most of the time.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, we had staff, but it's like those updates, it's like we were all reviewing the documentation and having meetings. And so like there was this natural consensus in the group. It was tough because, you know, we didn't have any, like, it seems like what you're showing is something that most people can, like everyone could agree on, like this is a bare minimum type of effort versus like this is pushing any envelope whatsoever. So I'm just curious about the process of that. And maybe this is different because of the sewer capacity and all these other like kind of city constraints that.
So, well, I don't know. Again, I have not participated. I participated in 44th in France as a resident.
Yeah.
I wasn't on the commission yet, so I don't know how apples to oranges in comparison this is or whatever. But I assumed that this was just a normal thing that the city did with consultants, and that, and originally all three of us were going to attend, and then there was some regulation where we couldn't. So it was just me at this point.
But why couldn't it be the whole group? I guess I'm just.
Well, we do meet. We meet twice as often. I think part of the deal is to make sure the consultants are on the right trail.
Yeah.
It's staff making sure that you're, meeting deadlines and going where you're going to do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's status meetings.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're generally there making a bunch of decisions, right? It's talking about how things are going and whatever. But in this case, we're presenting, the holiday season and city council meetings, work sessions, whatever, it's tough to get to. So it's tough, and I'm trying to get this done before I'm done, but so we're just in a tough situation that way.
Yeah, I was just curious about.
It's interesting to hear though that it worked very differently for other.
Yeah, I was just thinking because we had like rough drafts that like just kept coming back and forth to the working group, and we all would review it. So like there was never this like surprise element of like, here's something right before a deadline that you're about to propose, and like it doesn't quite match.
Right. How often did you meet? Remember?
No. I mean, I think it was like twice a month.
Oh, it was? Okay. Oh,
it was like early morning, maybe like an hour at a time.
That's interesting, because it seems to have changed. I don't know where that came from.
Like we had two commissioners as co-chairs,
right.
so there's some other changes too that I don't quite follow why. But I mean, we all care about the process and making it better for you, the rest of the commission, and the residents too. That seems disappointing.
Right. So, I mean, the residents, I mean, our statement does say, we want, a park-like atmosphere or whatever, but you can put a lot of trees in, in front of, the space is really deep because there isn't a road there. That's another thing we're talking about is potentially having either a road or just a pedestrian road. I mean, lots of good creative ideas and lots of feedback, and the meetings I think have been very good with everybody involved. But we're coming down to crunch time, sort of thing. And I just don't want it to fait accompli that this is the plan that we're going ahead with.
Got it.
So that's all I have to say.
Is there anything you need from the rest of us to support or assist in any of that?
Well, we're meeting with City Council at a work session on Tuesday, so yeah, anyone who can appear is good. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments? All right. Staff comments?
Do have one update on the cannabis ordinance. After you had made your recommendation, it was kind of on hold a little bit, but the city council did hold the public hearing at their last meeting, and they'll make a decision next week. I think the issue is going to be the buffers, and yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like some just didn't see a value in them and others did for different reasons, kind of like we talked about.
So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Oh, no. The meeting has been adjourned. Thank you, everybody.